And we're live.
Woo! Psychotechnologies live.
Psychotechnologies live. I like that we're getting more excited about these. This is good.
Yeah. Yeah. We're building up that ritual. Yeah, so this is a very exciting episode for our listeners because we're changing formats. Instead of us just chatting or doing Psychotechnologies live, we're going to watch a video called An Initiation to Game B. You should be able to see it on your screen. If you're listening to this soon after it comes out, just go to the Stoa. It'll be one of the newer videos. Otherwise, we'll put a link in the description. And this video is produced by a bunch of people. One of them is Jim Rutt, who you will know of Game B fame. If you guys aren't familiar with Game B, then, well, you should be familiar because we talked about it in the last episode. And we also got a little Jack in the background. And
hello, Jack.
Say hi. No, he's shy.
They're probably too young to be saying hi.
Yeah, but he makes fun noises. So we talked about a little bit about Game B in the last episode, and Jim Rudd is like a big guy there, or runs it or something, I don't really know. And this is the video. So if you all want to be initiated, if you don't know what it is, then watch this video with us. Elliot, should we go?
Yeah, let's go. What's going on with the world right now?
Sorry, what do you think of that so far?
It looks like the Matrix so far.
Yeah.
That'll be hard to follow if you were only listening to the audio because there was just computer noises.
Yeah, it had. Oh yeah, for those not listening, it's got like the Matrix, like the typing on the computer, but it's blue instead of green. So it's like kind of like evoking that aesthetic without like being that aesthetic.
Is that without infringing on the copyright of the aesthetic they're trying to copy?
No, I don't think. I think it's not just copyright. I think it's also like they're trying to like they're not the Matrix, right? It's a different awakening. You're like the Matrix, you're awakening to the system and stuff. But this is pretty similar. But I guess it's supposed to be like real life, not a movie or a game. But it doesn't really. In my opinion, it's very much, yeah, whatever. But yeah, okay.
All right, let's go.
What happened?
You have been initiated.
Huh?
Let's move. We haven't much time.
Time? For what?
Until the parasite takes hold of you again.
Thank you.
You're weak, but you now have eyes to see.
What am I looking at? Where am I?
Like most everyone you know, you have been hijacked by a parasite. The parasite was born of Game A, the game you've been playing your whole life. It tells you how to think, feel, and what to do.
Now that you are temporarily free of its influence, we'd like to take you on a journey.
A journey? To where?
A journey to Game B.
The Journey to Game B is a story about the relationship between humanity, technology, and nature. It's a story not only about survival, but the potential for thriving. You and your tribe will be among the first people to play Game B.
We have traced our steps back to the beginning, just before the dawn of human civilization. Before Game A, there was the first game.
Is this like the Ghost of Christmas Past?
Well, they're setting the space now.
Yeah.
So they got like you awaken and then you see the guides, right? So if you have a hero's journey sort of perspective there, like this is you make the hero makes the choice. You know, they're unsure about it, but they make the choice, and then all these archetypes sort of show up and help them. And then they say, this is the story of humanity. This is the shit we've been talking about, right? For the last bunch of episodes, where people come in and they say, this is the story of humanity. So now
you're the era of
yes. Yes.
Era of Game B. We have invented the era of the Game B.
Yes. But no, see, you can't start there. You have to go back and say, this is what history is, right? So it's like sort of a, I don't want to say revisionist, because I'm not, whether or not they're correct or incorrect, I think is a discussion that we can have later.
You're like a retroactivist.
But they're naming a thing and they're saying this is the pattern.
Sure.
And so they're setting the stage.
The first game was our most enduring and successful game. A game we played for over 100,000 years.
Our nomadic ancestors stood apart from their natural cohabitants in their special ability to adapt across all bioregions of the Earth. The key to their adaptability was culture, a new strategy for group cooperation. These early nomadic cultures operated within principles of wholeness and regeneration.
The first game was, of course, multiplayer. Each player is necessary to sustain the principle of wholeness by stewarding the cycle of regeneration. All players must be present and respect each other's roles.
This is very revisionist.
I am the sage who seeks truth and ensures its transmission to the coming generations. My wisdom is that of the mind.
I am the chief who seeks to build a better world for the coming generations. My wisdom is that of the body and its extensions.
I am the matriarch who gives life and purpose to the coming generations. My wisdom is that of the heart.
Which role am I?
As a Game B pioneer, you must do what is yours to do and bring together all of the necessary roles to sustain the principles of wholeness and regeneration.
I feel like saying, you are the player. Terrifying words. Your job is to play the game. Oh no. And
I love also the archetypes. It's like they woken up and we're all in harmony, and each sort of archetype is saying it's like coming from wisdom, but then it's different stuff. So it's as if like in the olden days, back when we were early hunter-gatherers, chiefs were just there to be wise about like the physical world. And matriarchs are just there to be wise about the love, and the sage was there to be wise about the knowledge.
I do want to point out, this is very revisionist. Like the reason that us today, we do not have megafauna is because historically we ate them all. Like we didn't act in harmony with regeneration of the past. There's this romanticism that is occasionally projected on past culture that they lived in harmony with nature. No, they didn't. They literally burned down Australia until it was a desert. Like, turns out if you burn down the bush, all the animals come running out and then you can eat them. And you just do that often enough, anytime you're hungry enough, and suddenly there's no more luscious rainforest, there's this dry, arid. And not only that, the trees adapt, and so you get eucalypts that like burning things. And yeah, it turns out that elephants, there used to be all sorts of giant creatures like elephants, but we ate them all. We ate the rest of them. That's just how it is.
And I remember we've had this discussion before, but for the viewers, when you said we, I assumed you meant white people when they came in. And this
like every civilization ever just ate all the animals they could. And who's to blame them? They were trying to survive, trying to live, trying to eat whatever. You just eat whatever. But the big things, maybe it takes a while to take one down, but then you eat for like weeks and weeks. But eventually you do run out of big things. So this is a bit revisionist, that the past we lived in harmony, whereas
but you mean like humans when they first settled Australia, not white people when they first settled.
Yeah.
10,000
Indigenous Australian cultures burned down Australia until there was only a desert.
And this is like 10,000 years ago when we were humans and when we
right. So
we as humans.
I'm not amazing at history, but let me put some things in place. So writing, the first documented piece of writing we have is about 10,000 years ago. And I think that one was someone wrote down the name of the slave that they were trading or something. And it's on a random piece of whatever. And that's like, in the future, they'll go through our trash and they'll be like, a candy wrapper, they ate candy. Wow, candy was the standard food. And then that's because they didn't know anything about nutrition. It would be like, oh man, what have they done? Anyway, so there's that's writing about 10,000 years ago.
No, it's because we don't know about psychotechnology. That's why we keep eating things that are bad for us.
Right. And then
because they're going to be post psychotechnology era.
So if you go back further than that, we probably had pseudo writings or symbols, but we didn't really have writing culture. Now, bearing in mind that Jesus 2,000 years ago, Jewish history 5760 years ago, that's sort of civilizations that record things that have been claimed to be recording things for a long time, sort of go back that far. Writing 10,000. We have this problem with carbon dating, and I don't know the exact number, but at some point, you're trying to measure how many carbon 14 molecules there are in an object, right? Like a lump of wood or something. And while a thing is living, it will put more carbon into the object, and some of them will be 12 and some of them will be 14. And so if you measure how many carbon 14s are left by measuring how many of them are decaying now, you can tell how long ago it was alive. At some point,
with the radioactive decay,
right,
it has like a standard half-life, and then you're expecting
so a half-life is after a certain period of time, you can expect around about half as many molecules to still have radioactive decay to do, and then after a certain amount of time, about half left, and a certain amount of time, half again. At some point, you run out of molecules to decay, at which point things are carbon 14 dead. We just don't know the difference between, I think it's about 50,000 years, might be closer to 100,000, but anywhere between 100,000 and like several 100,000 years, there's no carbon 14 to help us to know how old that thing is. So our history, our ability to do history, we can do other dating, but not
like organic matter.
Yeah. So there's a weird thing around about that time where we don't really know what was happening on that scale, but we do know like 10,000 years is there's still carbon, but 50,000 years we're starting to lose the capacity.
I think before that, like to find out things before that, we use like geology and stuff.
Right. So
but it's
when we're revisioning the history, we're looking at now bearing in mind that humans also did this to other humans. We literally killed every other homo sapien type creature. We have monkeys, right? Those are the ones we didn't really kill because probably they didn't pose enough threat to us. But we killed the Neanderthals. At some point, humans nearly completely became extinct. There was only about 10,000 humans left on the south part of Africa. And then the population boomed and they kept going and they grew back out again. But we nearly dropped dead. Like we nearly became extinct ourselves. So, and that's like, we only know so much of our history, but that's an interesting. And then from there was three main waves that crossed Europe and then down the Americas, and then we get to the modern civilizations that went and recaptured everywhere and that sort of thing. But
the Polynesians have also crazy history with this as well.
right, and the New Zealand.
Have
do you know the story of New Zealand?
No.
This is
Polynesian culture.
So don't quote me on this because I'm going to screw it up. But at some point, some Japanese sailors left Japan, sailed down the like Indonesian sort of island coast, picked up a bunch of wives, and then kept going. Went past Australia and got to New Zealand and stayed there. And so New Zealand, the native New Zealand Maori culture is about 500 years old. And so when settlers came, they had 500, very young. Yeah, so when the settlers came, they had like a hierarchical culture, and they could negotiate. So the Australian Aboriginal didn't really have hierarchical culture; they had tribal culture. So the various tribes were nomadic and settled wherever they liked. But when foreigners came in, they just kicked people off their land because the Australian Aboriginal culture didn't really. Land was everyone's. It wasn't owned, whereas European cultures obviously started subdividing into like who owns which plots. Whereas in New Zealand, they had this the hierarchical culture, and so they could negotiate with the locals to buy the land or to have some of the assets. And so New Zealand population didn't get decimated in the same way as Australian culture because they could interface with the locals and they could organize they could do they could make agreements and they could make truces and that sort of thing.
They could like coordinate,
right,
or self-organize themselves.
Right. So the history of the Maori culture is documented. It's in museums. It's like, oh, we know what they are rather than completely being decimated, compared to the Australian culture where many of the local tribes got completely wiped out. There was like a sort of an ethnic cleansing, but historically, how many thousands and thousands of times did one tribe completely wipe out another tribe? You know, they've done this revisionist history that we all lived in harmony, but actually we didn't. We all lived in like butchering each other constantly. Like where we are today, you can't murder someone and get away with it, probably. It would be very difficult. But if you go back 100 years,
unless you're rich.
So go back 100 years, 1920, they didn't have DNA evidence. You could murder someone and then run away a couple of towns over and no one would ever find you, right? Now you go back 200 years, and if you didn't like someone, you would just kill someone. That's just what you did, I guess.
Yeah, I believe it was, like.
And people were like, oh, better not piss him off. He might kill me too. Like that was
like
the way.
Several hundred years ago, even in England, like that's just what they did.
Right, they had duels. They had like, even in America.
Duels, I like.
Right, there was some sort of like, let's be noble about this and only shoot each other, as opposed to like each other in unfair terms.
It's like, let's take this outside and settle it, right?
Right.
And then that's what you did, and it was agreed upon, because you could just refuse a duel, right? Like it's not like, but yeah, like I would just refuse a duel. Like I like the idea of duels, but I'm not going to duel anyone.
Right. But so that's what that was the civilized version of, you know, if you throw a couple of 100 years earlier, like we would just kill each other. You don't like someone, you kill them. That's what, not nice, but that's culture. So to consider yourself a cultured person, you probably do less of that or hire people to do things for you or try and build a structured society in which people aren't killing each other so much. But that's the foundations of us today. And we like to wash over and pretend like that's not our history. But actually, we're only here because we killed the other guys. Anyway, so here we are, a bit of revisionist history, but we're going to keep going with the video.
I was going to say the Polynesians have stories, and I don't know that this is accurate, but they have stories of, like, when the Hawaiian Islands, when they first came there were these other, like they have like other words for them, lore that
oh no.
So they would be like something, you know, like something closely related, but not exactly what we'd call human. And then they just had like waves of that happening. And now the newest one is like the Americans colonized, or I guess took over or something, Hawaii, and now, you know, now they're upset about it. But I was hanging out with this native guy who was just like, yeah, this is just how this works. and he's like totally fine with how things are. which is pretty funny.
I would like us to be more fine with how gruesome our history is, because I don't think we actually are honest enough.
I think this is a method of control. I think from like sort of like because our system is at least somewhat hierarchical, like pretty.
We try to limit violence, because if we tell everyone that we were always kind creatures and we were never that violent, that no one thinks being violent today.
Yeah, it keeps the population docile and not wanting to rebel.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, but it also keeps us a little bit like not wanting to murder each other, which is also good. All right, back to the video. Oh yeah, now they can do the parasite.
Yeah.
I love this. Like immediately like archetype like good and evil.
The parasite. It's waking up. We have to hurry.
You mustn't allow the creature to take hold. Breathe deeply and keep your wisdom centers open.
I like how there's literally a bug on the back of her neck and she's just gonna leave it there. Like, pick it up, throw it away, do something. I don't know. The three wise sages haven't been all like, here, let's cut that off for you. Like, okay.
Nature's abundance functions in a constant state of regenerative motion. This is wholeness. As stewards, all players in the human tribe must move with nature's cycles, as our nomadic ancestors once did.
Here, take this talisman.
In the first game, cooperation was the rule within each tribe. By utilizing the co-creative strategy of culture, each player felt a sense of membership and belonging in their tribe.
All tribes were indigenous to a specific place on Earth, our bioregions, like here, along the Cascade Range. Each tribe grew niches around the habitats available to it. This is true for all living beings. Shelters, tools, weapons, clothing, and medicines, all made from resources that were immediately available to them and skillfully constructed with knowledge of the local plants and animals.
Although neighboring tribes were regarded as dangerous, the most resilient of tribes traded goods and knowledge in patterns of both cooperation and competition.
For a long time, the number of tribes across all bioregions innately respected the principle of wholeness, so they stayed in a harsh but steady balance with nature. But even nature's bounty has her limits.
Over time, the first game became so successful, the number and size of tribes grew large, forcing us into close proximity with one another.
Once we were no longer free to roam, we had no choice but to settle in place, and competition intensified for nature's bounty.
A new game.
I don't like this. Like they're saying that like human built cities because they ran out of room, sort of vibe.
Yeah, that's probably not how it went. I've heard a proposal that there's a theory that we domesticated animals, and then later domesticated plants in an effort to secure our food source. But there's even a possibility it went the other way, that when we discovered there was an abundant food source like a corn or a wheat growing in a certain area, we settled in that region and the plants domesticated us. And then because we were there more stably, then we had to develop cities and cultures that had more stability.
That's interesting.
Right.
That's an interesting perspective. That as soon as you said like the plants domesticated us, I had like a vision that we're, I don't know, like the plants are in charge of us or something.
Right. So there's a theory that, and I've stopped that so that we can actually talk. I have this wild theory that if you look at different cultures and their native foods, right? So obviously wherever we are, we eat whatever we got, right? But there are some foods that aren't available in certain regions. So particularly, and I'm going to pick on India because India is a region with great volumes of spice, right? And there's something that spices do to your interiors where you feel very different. You can have, first of all, if you have too much nutmeg, you start hallucinating. But nutmeg. Oh man, let me pause and go for nutmeg for a moment.
Oh yeah, I've heard of this.
I love the nutmeg stories because it's about once every couple of years that some teenager turns up in an emergency room and they're like, what the heck are you on? And the teenager is like, I ate a lot of nutmeg. And basically nutmeg is a substance on which you can only have a bad trip. And so they're like, okay, this is gonna get rough. And then they give you a bed and they leave you there for 24 to 48 hours. And then eventually you come back around and you're like, never again. But somehow we don't need to regulate nutmeg because it's just a really bad trip every single time. You Google it and you're like, what's the hallucinogen of nutmeg like? And everyone's like, it's really bad, don't do it. Like there's a database called Erowid, EROWID, and they have like trip reports from various substances, and nutmeg is on there. Obviously everything's on there. Nutmeg, there is no good trip on nutmeg. It's all bad. You just feel like shit constantly. And then I don't even know the category of terrible. Anyway, so nutmeg is a spice that, but you have other spices like chili, right? And chili does this thing where you heat up inside. You're like, oh, I'm on fire. Things great. Yeah. And the question is, what can that do culturally to the consciousness of the society when they're constantly encountering like something that's like angry, like fiery hot, as a like social food fun thing, right? Okay. That culture is going to be very different to a culture that's never gotten angry like that or never had that like, this is just spice, you know? And so I have this crazy theory that the plants have cultured us and the food sources we had available to us give us our culture, just in the same way that Russia has potatoes, and so they can survive and the
potatoes is a new world food, so that would have been only since Christopher Columbus.
Right. So interestingly, America as a continent has a long horizontal, like it crosses has the same latitude for a long region and not the same longitude and the same longitude. And the thing you can do with the same latitude is you can grow the same plant across the whole latitude. Yeah. Whereas if you have a longitude, you have a different sun, you have different water, and you're less likely to be able to grow the same plant in the north as the south. But in the west, you can.
Jared Diamond talks about this in Guns, Germs, and Steel,
right?
Where like saying that's why the advantage of why,
yes,
like why the old world, let's say, had such an advantage is because they had this long horizontal where you could have all of these different varieties of plant and animal life.
Right. So potentially the plants domesticated us. The plants massively influenced our culture. We think we domesticated the plants, but maybe it's more influential that if we didn't, like the regions that had corn could grow corn, the regions that had wheat could grow wheat. If your region didn't have a plant, you couldn't domesticate it. And sure, you can take a grass and you can try and make the seeds bigger, but chances are that when we give ourselves the credit of having domesticated the plants and the animals, you know, maybe the dogs domesticated us.
I do like this.
Not intentionally, like I don't want to give them too much intelligence, but just coincidentally.
But let's say the evolutionary, to say like the evolutionary forces for this side did to us. But I think that's sort of what I think they're getting at a little bit here, is that there is this agent arena relationship where you know, we're doing the arena, like we're changing our environment, but then if you switch perspectives, the environment is like, from the wheat's perspective, we're the environment and they're the agent. And so there's this like symbiotic relationship going on.
Wheat doesn't really have a brain to contain its agency. So
yeah.
It's not the most productive agent, but it does seem to multiply. So
it doesn't have to be, like, it doesn't need intelligence to survive and replicate. It's or alternatively, from its perspective, if you were to steal man wheat, it would say, like, I'm using the human's brain, like, what do I need my own? Right?
Yeah, it just needs to ride on the backs of more intelligent creatures as long as it survives.
Like, it's just using our minds as slaves to just mindlessly just and then, you know, we're gonna like visit other planets, and you know, Mars is
gonna take planets with us, yeah,
there, right? So what are we gonna do, right? So So like, you know, humans are wheat's way of traveling through the stars and spreading itself to other planets.
Yep.
And yeah, so that's what I think they're talking about with this like cooperative and interconnected game. Like this is the thing that they're referring to. Like if you really steelman this, then yeah, that's what's going on then, but also that's what's going on now, and that's always going on and always will go on until, let's say, the heat of the universe or something.
Do you want to go back and watch more video?
Yeah.
Game emerged.
You got to share screen.
Oh. Yeah. Share screen. See it?
Yep.
And competition intensified for nature's bounty.
A new game emerged. Game A.
Yeah, there's definitely like they've revisioned. They put their game as first and game A is on top, and then like let's go back to the okay, whatever.
Where are we now? Or when?
Here we stand before the cradle of civilization at the birth of Game A. As competition increased, the tribe began to lose its instinctual ability to sustain the principles of wholeness and regeneration.
Game A is the game of growth, rivalry, control, and accumulation. Human settlement meant the accumulation and control of resources, knowledge, and people. The race to accumulate and control accelerated faster and faster, and competition began to dominate cooperation. Though necessary to advance the human tribe, Game A would prove to be fragile.
Even the players that depended on each other began...
Yeah, this thing I don't like about the fragility, because like accumulating resources is designed to be non-fragile. And that's what it does, right? Like if you're able to store grain, you know, I mean, just like take the Bible story where there's 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine, and you know, Joseph comes in and says, well, let's store the stuff over these years, because that way you can survive famines if you have, you know, years worth of food. And if you're able to control, and like these at the Nile where they're doing the irrigation, you have like you know, and then yeah, and the tribes evolve, like the tribe that's able to sustain it to like be like, let's say, the most fittest or something is able to take over and do the things that they need to do.
Well, there's a story they're not weaving here, which is that the two games support each other and weave into each other. So bits of competition and zero sum end up making a world that is plentiful and bountiful, and then we get sick of the competition, and then we revert back to the like hanging out together and peace, love, happy, and then we get sick of that one, and we decide we want competition again. So maybe there's somewhat one of those relationships, which there is definitely not space for in this story, but that's okay.
Right. That's the thing, is they're not leaving space for these other things, which kind of bugs me.
And to compete with one another. The players assumed control and dominion over nature's land and her bounty, and over each other. Before long, culture would be divided into rigid class structures, and those with the greatest accumulation sat at the top of an exclusive hierarchy.
What we do to nature, we do to ourselves.
The strategy of culture itself underwent diverse adaptation as empires competed for more and more accumulation and control, and killed off those who couldn't or wouldn't play the new game. In our race to master Game A, nature's stewardship was lost.
Because Game A's technology takes from nature without bothering to give back. It is fundamentally exploitative. The strategy of rivalry and accumulation led to the exponential development of complicated technologies. Since
complicated technology.
Yeah, first off, that like what the hell? Like they're demonizing complicated technology.
Technology's bad.
And by the way, like this is a tech company that made this, at least, right?
Yeah.
It's like this is Like, I don't know what engine they're using, but I can guarantee you it's a complicated one.
Let me tell you that some of the benefits of complicated technology is that we can farm at scale and we can feed everyone. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Yes, we
Yeah,
harness the natural resources to do so, and then hopefully we compost our waste afterwards. But complicated technologies means we can feed everyone for cheap.
Yeah. There was a thing I thought.
Maybe it's coming.
I think there is something about the exploitiveness that they're talking about. Where there is like there is this that they're referring to, like the agricultural revolution, for instance. And the way we've been doing agriculture now, I think, does lead to soil degradation, and that it's been like that for at least a bunch of centuries.
Right. There are ways in which we do not fully account for the externalities of our society's processes. For example, we do burn through the resources in the soil and we don't necessarily replenish. We pollute the air. It's shifted. So now we pollute the air and we don't necessarily carbon capture everything back yet. Hopefully we will in the near to coming future. We even have filled up the wavelengths of energy, like radio waves, right?
Like radio waves and stuff.
We've cut it up and we've made TV signals and radio signals, and
but
it's kind of full and busy.
That one we have, like, well, but like that's like, it's like this. There was a space before, right?
Well,
there was. I don't know how to describe the space where radio waves take place, but
right.
Like, no one was using that.
There was an unused spectrum of the wavelength that was not that we've now filled with stuff, right?
Yeah, and it's my understanding that job is done pretty well, actually. Like
wavelengths we've done pretty fairly, other than the fact that maybe somewhere something was peaceful and now it's not, because it's filled with I'm fairly certain, or we're fairly certain, that it was not harmful to have filled up most of the spectrum of radio waves. There's no harm to us if there's more radio channels. There is harm to us if it's X-rays or if it's UV.
Yeah. And there are certain spectrums, right, like that you
right.
use.
Right. And it doesn't matter, like visible light doesn't particularly harm us. Although light pollution does seem to annoy us, because when we live in the city and there's lots of light and we can't see the stars anymore. Maybe
and it messes, it does mess with the ecosystem and stuff, and that stuff is all real. But also, like, lights are awesome. Being able to see is really important to humans.
Yes. But we didn't think, when we made the light bulb, we didn't think of, oh no, we're gonna make light pollution and screw up our visibility in space.
Or maybe they did and they did it anyway.
Yep. Or maybe they did a little bit and were like, this is fine, and they kept going.
Yeah.
But habitually, when we invent new technologies, we don't think about the ramifications of them on every.
I don't know if that's true. This is another thing people keep pushing. That they don't, we don't think about the ramifications. I know today people think about the ramifications for a lot of stuff.
Right. And some people think about the ramifications, but not everyone does. Or maybe not necessarily the person doing it thinks about the ramifications.
Decision. Right. Let's say Thomas Edison had thought about it.
Yes.
Would he not have still invented the light bulb?
I think he probably would have. And I think we would still be going like, did he really think this through?
Yeah, so maybe he did think, like, just to like overly steel man him, like, let's say he did think about it and he somehow did all the math and figured out those solutions, did all his math and philosophy and all 100% correctly.
Imagine if someone said to him, hey, Thomas Edison, if we give people the light bulb, then they'll be forced to work for more hours into the night. And he went, productivity bonus, lack of sleep. And he went, this is worth the trade-off. Chances are he would have gone, this is worth the trade-off.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, yeah. But he still would have done it, and it still would have been the right decision. And if nobody had invented light bulbs and I could invent a light bulb, I would do that. And same with almost all the inventions today. Like, I don't know that I necessarily invent like nuclear bombs or something, but like almost all the stuff is actually like positive sum.
Yeah. with a negative externality that is obviously less than the benefit of, like, the farming agricultural revolution means we can now feed people. The pollution of the rivers is like kind of bad, but I'd still rather feed people and pollute the rivers than not feed people. If that's the choice, ideally I can both feed people and keep the rivers clean, but that's coming.
Yeah, that is happening, and I do think that the running waste, like the runoff from I think it's not even from the chemical plants anymore. It's from the fields where the nitrogen will, like after rain, the nitrogen will go into the water, and that will have algae blooms, which will choke off and all that stuff. But that's like, there's like, people are working on that, right? Like I don't expect this problem to be unsolved in 100 years.
No, I think that I see a lot more stepping stones than, like, if I were to say either technology bad, which they've said, or technology good. I feel like both of those are wrong in different ways. I see this as,
what if it's complicated technology?
Oh no. What if it's complicated as to whether it's good or bad? Like, this is a stepping stone to picking which technologies are good and which technologies are bad, and producing less of the bad ones and producing more of the good ones, and then curtailing the damage of the bad ones, and then that's our future. All right, do you want to share screen and go to the next bit of video?
These technologies require...
Oh, sorry.
Direction from the geosphere. Eventually, they become lethal to the biosphere. As
Geosphere, I think, is the Earth, right? And then biosphere would be what?
Geology, yeah, the Earth. So we dig up things. Biosphere is the things we live. Yeah,
but like kind of, but like not. It's not that bad.
It's not that black and white, and it's not that bad, and that's okay.
Yeah, like I'd rather have metals than.
As the game
plastic
continues to advance, our global ecosystems are collapsing. All the while, our technologies are gaining the potential for destruction and depletion on a vast scale.
I also love this music in the background they have. Like, it's like, this is so bad, and they got the like that like tone, that eerie, unpleasant, like 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 this is the gestalt that you're to feel, and we'll like get you to feel that way. Which I do feel like this stuff is kind of manipulative.
Yeah, keep going. But, see where we go. I'm keen for game B.
Compared to the first game, however, Game A is young and its players are novice. When the principles of wholeness and regeneration are abandoned, there is only one fate: self-termination. Indeed, all empires since the beginning of Game A have risen only to later be forced into disintegration. The pattern is clear now. We must play a new game if we are to survive and thrive.
It's interesting they picked the word disintegration, because like I do think that like you have something like the Roman Empire, which, you know, turned into, let's say, like the Byzantine Empire, which turned into Christianity, things like that, and then that turned into, you know, whatever that spirit is moving forward. Like there is to a certain extent, like we are like it's still around.
Yeah, like,
but it is disintegrated. Like it's not. There's no Roman emperor. Unless you count the Pope.
Well, we do this thing where we harness the parts of the past to build the future. We do keep doing that.
Yeah, that's the wholeness. The what's it called? That wholeness cycle that you're doing, where the thing becomes the one, and then that disintegrates, like that dissolves within wherever it is, and then from, you know, that phoenix sort of situation where it from the ashes the new arises.
I'd like to point out once again that they laid, like, foundationally their game of living in concurrent existence with nature, and then they made Game A the game on top, and then we must return to so they've done some revisionist history again, but like I think they're going to keep doing it, but that's all right. Just and then there's a fundamental battle for we talked about this previously. What is the ground state of your metaphysical belief? Like what structure do you live in? Do you live in the world of bits and atoms, or do you live in the world of game A, game B? Like, what is your base model of reality? Or do you live in like headlessness, the headless way model of reality, where I know that I look out my eyes and I experience appendages coming out of my body, hands and legs, but from that really first-person perspective, I have like, there's a thing in front of me, and if I dig up my memory banks, that's a computer screen, but actually I'm just seeing a thing. Like, that's a different base state of experience. Like, do you want the why don't we all get along as the base state of your experience? Or do you want the game A as the, like, maybe we were competitive before we were collaborative?
Yeah. And there is also something about like the way they're constructing the frame. The solution itself is going to be something within the frame versus this is why I like the spiral dynamics, or like a lot of like the enlightenment let's say kind of stuff, or meditation kind of stuff, or even like the systems thinking or whatever, where the solution is to like leave the frame that you're in. And so for this one, it's like they're creating a frame that is not a good frame, and then they're going to give you the answer, or maybe, I mean, we haven't seen it yet, but
the crazy thing that I see is that, who are they selling this to? Are they selling this to the people who already agree with game A, game B thing, who are going to go, that's not really how it was, but I still like game B? Or are they trying to sell it to other people who aren't currently in the game A, game B thing? Like, what are they trying to do here?
I don't know.
There's some sort of delusion if they think that this is going to sell to other people.
What do you mean? This could sell.
As a narrative, like, will this actually be convincing to other people? Well, not if you lie like this. It has flaws.
Most people don't know history.
No. You think that most people don't know history, and if they tell it like this, then it will just
like
into someone's like, oh, this is your new primary model.
Yeah. You just tell people this is how it is. Like, how many people know? Like, I've read like tons and tons of books on and videos and all these things on the past, and like I still don't know really like how it worked, right? You could just say whatever you want, and you find a little piece of evidence, and then that's how it is.
It's terrifying. Suddenly I am scared. Suddenly I'm like, oh,
okay,
God.
Now you're on my side.
And
now you see why.
But I'm not scared of this story. I'm scared of how easy it is to undermine other people's existing reality and put your own version in there. It's terrifying.
Yeah,
that most people haven't
seen religionist. or atheist or whatever. Like, that's on that level of abstraction is what they're doing. Is they're saying, here's the story because you don't have one, because we're born without stories. Like, he doesn't even know what stories are, let alone like.
We are talking about Jack. Hello, Jack.
Yeah.
Jack doesn't even know what stories are. He's going to have to believe one of them at some point, or not going to have to, but he probably will.
Get sucked into the story. Like, I'll tell him the story, and he'll, kids are always like, read me books and tell me this story and that story. Because we're not born with stories. Like, even though this is our history and this is us, you're saying we did this, we did that, but I have, maybe like you could say like there's like some genetic memory or something, but really realistically, like there's no memory of generations back. I mean, I grew up like Jewish, and we got a Masorah, we got a tradition from Sinai, which we say is like 3,000 years old. And like, it's cool because when I learn about the history in the region at the time, a lot of the religious stuff starts to make sense, because I'm like, oh, like they're like, these things probably made sense in those days, in that society. But like, I still don't know. Like, nobody knows what's going on. But we still have a need for this story, which is another thing I like having the meditation stuff. It lets, at least I guess, or the psychotechnology stuff, it lets you move past the stories. You don't need stories. You can just.
There's an idea that the Christian structure of religion, the there is only one God type structure, if you're raised in it, even if you don't strongly believe or strongly attached to it, it inoculates you against a polytheism, like a belief in many spirits and gods and beings that are rulers. In some way, it prevents you from believing that hocus pocus, because you're like, no, I was raised in this hocus pocus, and I definitely don't believe that. But it means I also don't believe all that.
But I also kind of believe it. Like I think that there is, like, it has to be that there is only one God, right? And you can say there's some things. There is only one thing.
I can see how people could strongly anchor in the belief of many different powerful forces in arguments. We're talking second level in spiral dynamics.
Yeah, this is second level spiral dynamics.
I could see people like believing that and strongly living their lives by that paradigm. Absolutely. Just like I see people live by the single paradigm.
Like you can still do the multiple power things, but at the end of the day, there's still only like one you, and maybe it's moving into like expected value or something, but like you're still like there are other people in the world, but there's only like one, like you're still you're still binary, like you're still making decisions at the end of the day. And if you want to make decisions, you've got to like have some way of doing that, and that way is one.
Have you ever had an experience where you suddenly like shifted your personality? You were like one type of person, and then you were suddenly a new type of person?
Yeah.
So what was that? What happened?
Well, I can say what like the experience was like from the inside.
Yeah.
Which would be like with the shrooms, like I used to, like this thing that I'm saying now, I used to be inside of that idea. I used to not be able to, like, a sort of object where I'm like, yes, there is, and then I start off religious and I'm like, no, actually there is no God. So now I'm atheist, but there still is some system that is correct, or at least most correct. And now I agree with that, but also I'm recognizing that I don't necessarily know it.
Right. So you used to have a strong belief in Jewish religion, and then you sort of stepped out of that now.
Yeah, but you're still making, like, you should still be consistent.
This anchored your personality, your structure of the world, your belief in all existence, sort of filtered through in support of this map that looked like Judaism, right? And then you shifted away from it, and you sort of have a different map now.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly like a map that looked like Judaism. It was Judaism is the correct map, and now I'm going to follow it and flesh it out as much as I can. And then when I left, it became a map that looked like Judaism, kind of, but like not. But there was like still a lot of the values I have, and the way I think and the way I see the world is definitely influenced from that, for sure, and created a lot of that stuff I actually like.
Right. So imagine if you lived in a world that wasn't the Jewish world, that was more of a tribal or a multicultural society, but back in history. And there is clearly certain pushes for religions. There's this way of seeing the world. This is how it is. And then you kind of can step out of that world and into this other one that is, and then you can step out of that one and into another one. And then chances are you're like, well, it does sure seem like
I still do that sometimes. But to me, I'm looking at that as a flaw. Like these are just completely different frames of reference. These are completely different contexts and things. And like I'm not able to always like go across, but like there's still one reality and there's still one me. So that's, and then in the middle, there's other things happening. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to Hawaii. When I went to Hawaii, I felt like we did the hula and worship with them, and I felt what they were feeling, like at least some level of what they were feeling, and I got why on this mountain region there's like the mountain god, and in the by the sea there's the sea god. Like these are very different ways of living, and you have to have different respects and different mindsets, or you're gonna die. And I can still do that and still believe that it's all one, and still also not understand how. and just accept that. But yeah, like I do get this mindset.
Well, so in the way that you've drawn the it's all one conclusion, I could see someone else draw the it's all many conclusion, because obviously there's the mounting god and there's a sea god, and it's just obviously there's many contributing.
Yeah, and you can still believe that. And if things had turned out differently and there really was actually these gods, these polytheistic gods that existed, and not in this higher level spiral dynamics, but in like an actually like, nope, there's a guy, that's his name, he comes from this dimension and all that stuff, there would still only be one, even if there are many.
One at a time? Or there would only be one at a time. Because of
no, there could be multiple
pointed witness.
Huh?
Because of the single pointed witness. You're saying that
there's the single pointed witness. And that makes it, and if there isn't, then it should be like you should triangulate. And then that's the single point of witness. Even if it's not.
Because sometimes there is another perspective that everything is happening all of the time. Even though I have a single point of witness, the everything is foundational to the single point of witness, not the single point of witness is foundation. The single point of witness, I move it around in order to observe everything, and then I generalize that everything is happening all the time. But either I'm experiencing the one thing at a time, and therefore my model is everything is one thing, or I'm experiencing the everything happening all the time, but I only look at bits of it at once, and therefore everything is happening, but my witness is limited to the single point of perspective. And there's a possibility to flip into the other one. To like,
and it's worth flirting. And sometimes I do live as if there's many. Because that's just that would be like the parsimonious explanation or something. But it all, like you want to be able to draw conclusions from something you learned in one space to another space, because that will give you the edge in both spaces. Yeah. And you'll be able to, let's say from a game A perspective, you'll be able to outcompete, but from a pre-game A, you'd be able to be in harmony because you'd understand the larger picture. And then from a game, well, we haven't really gotten to game B yet, so I'm not going to spell
right.
That, but
do you want to keep going to game B? You want to hit share screen again?
Yeah. Screen.
Game B.
Wait, does that mean going back to the first game?
Ah, yes, the pre-trans fallacy.
The only way out is through.
Wait, what?
So there's a concept called the pre-trans fallacy, where I know this stuff, and so I know what they've included here. Like the pre-trans fallacy is to say, pre-rational, rational, post-rational. So to the rational perspective, to have someone say, why don't we go back to the weird stuff where we didn't understand stuff, where the rational people will say, but that's moving backwards, right? Why would we move backwards? Whereas from the post-rational perspective, it's obvious that was a forwards move, not a backwards move. And sometimes people will, in the middle, will be confused and be like, I don't want to move backwards, when in fact there's a forwards direction that looks less rational, but seems like it's a forward move.
Yeah, this is like the transcendent include, I think.
Transcendent include. Yes, where so to go from pre-rational to rational, we separated ourselves from the irrationality that we're made out of, and we said I can be logical and I can be stable, and I like this, and this is like a forward direction. And then as we hang out in our rationality for long enough, eventually we realize how irrational we are as creatures, and we keep running away from it, and we keep like shunning it and hiding it and shadowing it until eventually we get to a point where like, oh, I can't ignore that thing. That thing's really loud. And so I reintegrate it. And instead of moving backwards into pre-rationality, I move forwards into post-rationality, where I'm a very rational being. And I have to start taking into account my pre-rational drives and urges, because that's the only way forward. Because otherwise it'll just keep getting louder and louder and louder until it does get me to do what it wants, because it's a big part of me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really think that's how you tell if you're moving backwards or forwards. Is if are you actually including the things before? So like with the rational,
there's often a fear, like if you ever look at someone who, and this is one of my favorite little paradigms. If you ever look at someone who seems very successful and functional but seems to be crazy, like you're like, who is this madman and how did they get to the top of some status hierarchy, like they're wealthy or something, when they're that insane? Well, chances are they're not insane. They're actually doing something that you don't understand, because they managed to skillfully get their way up there. While now sometimes random people roll the dice and get up to the top of hierarchy, but more often than not, you'll probably find that they're way smarter than you realize, and they are. So people like Russell Brand, seems like he's a bit of a nutter. People like Elon, seems like he's a bit of a shit poster.
I like Russell Brand, yeah.
You know, these people, they're not just the backwards weirdos, they're actually the forwards, the hidden geniuses who don't care.
The forwards weirdos.
Forwards weirdos, hidden geniuses don't care what you think in some way, and it's your job to stop treating them like idiots and start trying to work out how they got to where they got and how they got so successful, given that they are in a very different place to where you are.
Yeah, I do think that there is something, like I love that you picked Russell Brand as that example, because there is something where there is a level, I don't know now, but let's say back in the past, where like he was addicted to drugs and other things. Like he
went through some bumpy stuff.
Sorry?
He went through some very bumpy stuff along there.
Yeah, and I think that there is, but he was still like very successful, at least like in this way. And so there's something of like a
paradigm.
Yeah, an actor, but also like with women and money and
he's done a bunch of things right.
Probably had an interesting, like he probably had fun and stuff. But yeah, there's this other side.
John Mcaffee as well. John Mcaffee is another one who I was a genius before his time. He's unfortunately probably dead now.
He
possible suicide, likely suicide, despite insisting that he never would.
It's unclear if that's an Epstein situation or.
Yeah, but he seemed like a person who was clearly doing mad things.
Richard Branson is also like this, but he doesn't seem to have that negative side so much. But I think there's something like parallel to it, where they're seeing something and they're able to do something that is very difficult or impossible or something for normal people to do. But then they're missing out on all this stuff where regular people can just like not get addicted to substances. But they also can't be like super famous rich actors at the same time. And then now, like definitely now, I think he's like trying to reclaim all that other stuff.
It's very hard to integrate these things. It's almost another funny. All right, let's keep going.
Yeah, but I do like him.
It is very important that we must take what we have learned from Game A, then once again move to sustain the principles of wholeness and regeneration.
The parasite you carry with you.
That we must transcend it.
Is an object of control and blind adherence to the rules of Game A. It was set upon you in your earliest years.
Oh no!
I actually really like this thing, because like I have noticed this in society.
Okay, so they're proposing that,
I guess like I don't know. Obviously,
they're proposing that adherence to structure, society, the rules, is endemic to Game A, to competition. And that's terrifying. Well, I would say I would have not said that. I would have said that there are rules, there are natural laws of the universe, and if you try and live out in a snowstorm, you're gonna drop dead. Like those are natural laws of the universe. They're in the similar way. If you try and murder people in society today, you'll get locked up. Can you say that again? Your connection's doing something funny.
Yeah. Sorry, it's natural law. Like I would say the sort of natural laws in the universe would be like something like physics. And then I would say natural law dictates that if you're outside in a snowstorm without an igloo or whatever, something like that, then you're
right. So I would say that there's natural laws just like there are societal laws. And if you don't follow the natural laws, you'll find out what happens if you don't. And if you don't follow societal laws, you'll find out what happens if you don't. It's not that following the laws is about game A, about competing with society. Following laws as a structure, as a phenomena, is separate to the game A and game B thing.
Right. And I think you're able to separate that, and a lot of other people aren't. And
Well,
I think this is one of the things that they're trying to do that I actually really like. Because I do see a lot of people follow rules. Like they just follow things. They're like, oh, this is what you're supposed to do. I'm like, but like, why? Like just, and they're like, oh, I have to do this thing. And I'm like, just don't do it. And they're like, oh, but all these things. I'm like, yeah, but it's not so bad. Like, whatever, like you'll do something, it'll be awkward for a little bit and then you'll be done, versus like you follow like this whole system that just makes your whole life miserable.
Mm.
And
I've never
seen this phenomenon as well.
So I come from a very meditative perspective. And in the meditative land, you go and you do a lot of go and see for yourself, discern reality, see for yourself, ultimate discernment. So the idea of, there's an idea called a thorn to remove a thorn, which is kind of traditional. You have a splinter in your finger. You need to, historically, we didn't have pins and needles, medical technology. You had to use another thorn to dig out the first thorn, right? Which is to propose that if you have a wrong view about the world, we need to use another wrong view about the world to dig out the first one and then remove both thorns, obviously.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that, but this is like, we're gonna just shove a different thorn in there and like, that'll be it. That'll make it better. This doesn't seem to be a thorn to remove a thorn. This is just like, let's swap that thorn for a new thorn.
Wait, I think I disagree with you on this.
I don't know where
I think
this
is a better thorn than what was there before.
Right, but I don't want a thorn. I want no thorns. And maybe this is going somewhere and it will like, they'll take the thorn.
Yeah, that's
right now they're adding, like they could have just said, what keeps the parasite in place? Well, what may keep the parasite in place is the same way in which we learn to adhere to natural laws. We started adhering to laws of the system because it allowed us to get along with each other. Like it's actually, they've like mushed up the game A, game B stuff. All right, hit play. And we'll keep going. Come back. Nope.
The parasite makes sure that you conform to game A by conditioning you to view yourself as separate from nature and from other people, so that you forget the principle of wholeness and your purpose as a steward of the
true.
earth.
Like you see this with like no artificial flavors or like natural versus human made, where there's this like distinction being pushed on us as if it's different. And like, I'm not saying those words aren't useful, but like people take it way too far.
There is some benefit to so let me take a different angle in here. So natural or unnatural flavors. I happen to have grown up in a family. I grew up in the 90s. I grew up before allergens and gluten-free and dairy-free were as common as they are today. And my mom was had a lot of food sensitivities, and they would cause things like stomach aches, itchy skin, like all sorts of puffy eyes. Like a great variety of physical reactions would happen in response to a great variety of foods. And so the words free from artificial this or free from flavors, free from colors mean something, and mean something very helpful when you take something innocuous like a jar of pickles, and sometimes they include in the jar of pickles a bit of yellow food coloring so that they look more edible rather than gray and dead, because pickled foods often look gray and dead. But that yellow food coloring would cause, happens to be my mom, it would cause like an itchy skin. And so she got very good at working out what is often used in things, and I got very used to like, oh, we should avoid those things for good reason, because we need to check ingredients and we need to know what's in things. Otherwise, you get these adverse reactions that are quite frustrating.
Right, and in that sense, it's very useful and it's good, and that's not the same phenomenon.
And then there's like let's just like a natural thing because it's natural. Actually, the synthetic flavors are sometimes less contain weird shit because if you take like nicotine, right? It's a single molecule. You take tobacco, you have a whole range of tobacconids. Yeah, same thing goes for THC.
Tobacconids.
Terpenes is the word we use in the weed-based industry, where you have the THC and CBD, and you have like 100 other terpenes that seem to be relevant and do something. But if you take the singular THC and CBD, you get a very different effect without those other ones. Yeah. So the synthetic ones, well, the synthetic ones are at least predictable or controllable in a way that the natural one is sometimes. Anyway, yes, those words do mean something, and yes, they don't always mean what they're, we'll get.
Yeah. I think organic is another one like that, where they're like, oh, it's organic, so it's magically fine. And
right.
Like, no,
it must
like,
be better because it's organic. Yeah.
Yeah, like no, there's still a whole structure behind that can't have problems.
Well, the thing that frustrates me nowadays is you take something that didn't usually have dairy in it and you write dairy free.
I love that.
Why do we now label it as dairy free?
I love also like gluten free. Like this apple is gluten free, dairy free,
fruit only. Yeah,
no additives. Like,
all right, let's move on.
The parasite knows only one god, the modern growth-based economy. But you can free yourself from its grasp.
How?
By starting with what you did at the outset of this journey, asking more questions than trying to provide answers.
This I really like, because I think this is a shift from people always having to have answers and things like that to being able to be in the question or the I don't know phase.
Say more.
Like if you have discussions,
pointing at here?
Sorry?
What do you think they're pointing at here?
So I'm not saying that I'm always like talking about what they're pointing at, but I'm sort of saying the things that I like that they're doing, even if it's, I don't know whether or not it's intentional. Yeah, like I don't like to sort of try to get into their minds and say, this is what they're doing and this is where they're coming from. But yeah, this thing is like, this is, yeah, like asking questions. Like all knowledge starts from lack of knowledge, which is questions. Like you're inquiring, hey, there's these things, what's going on? And that's how you start learning. If you come in knowing the answers, the metaphor would be like a filled vessel can't be filled.
Right. You need to already have an unknown in order to add.
Yeah, you have to empty yourself before you can let another.
So I would say that to bring in some psychotechnologies.
I guess we'll do that.
So bring in some psychotechnology, right? There is internally in the mental structure, an answer is shaped different to a question. It's just an answer is this is a book, right? This is a book. That's an answer. That's a piece of information. The shape of it in mental space is sort of like a pointer. It's a book. A question, on the other hand, and if I say, what is this or what's in this, it's shaped very differently. It's not the pointer that says that's what it is. It's it creates a open space. There's the bubble around the object, and we say, what is object?
Oh, I see. It's
and like so the mental structure of a question is different to the mental structure of an answer. And so the epistemics are different. What you can do with it, you can do things with the question that you can't do with an answer. You can also, like, if I said this is a book and you said, no, but really, what is it? Right? So we've taken the original label, it's a book. I point at it and I say book, and then we've gone, yeah, you said that, but also I'm going to make a bubble around it and delete the prior label and say, what is it again? And I have the option and say, but it's a book. Or I have the option to say, well, actually, this is my journal. This is what I write in. This is my writing book. This is my, like, I can deepen, I can take the prior structure and I can add depth to it in a way that had I rested on it's a book, I would have gotten bored with reality in some way. And so it invites a new growth of knowledge structure, because we can ask a question in places where we previously only had answers. And there's the psychotechnology here is what I would call a self-inquiry. So we're not just asking questions of the outside, we're asking questions of ourselves. Like, do I like this object? Right? And then, so it's a book. First inquiry, do I like this book? Right? Cool. So I can do a thing where I create a relational property of this book of do I like it? And that's like, let's put that over here. Do I like it? Right? And then I can answer that, right? I can fill that with an answer. I can say, yes, I like it. No, I don't like it. Or I can be like, I like it a bit. I can make it shades of gray, right? Or I can do something really cool where I can do another question, right? I can, in this place of do I like it? I can ask another question. I can be like, well, how would I know if I liked it? Or how do I know if I do like it? And I can put another question in here and make another relational space that is relating to the book, right? And that's something really cool. I can,
like, you're constructing a system just from asking questions,
right? And
because the questions sort of assume that there is an answer or something,
right? And so even if I'm there, right? How would I know if I like the book? And then I can ask another question, and I feel like, is this the right question to ask? Right? And now I'm like,
is that the right question to ask, right? Like, you can kind of
right. Amazing, right? Without having answered the questions, because remember, when I answer a question, I solidify.
This is like a koan,
right?
Yeah.
So instead of solidifying the structure of reality, I'm opening up all the structures of reality and not quite deconstructing, but I'm inviting more possibilities to the structure of reality.
Yeah,
which is fascinating and super cool and worth playing with.
For sure. When I was in sales, they always taught us, like, whoever's asking the questions. This is the thing, a negative side to questions. Not that I'm trying to discount you, but just sort of added. Whoever is asking the questions is in charge. So you would, if you didn't know what's going on, like if you lost control of the scenario, you would just ask questions, and then you would like sort of keep asking questions, and now you're back in charge. So we used to practice. We used to play this game where we would ask questions to each other, and whoever answers a question loses.
Right. So I should be like, what do you mean by that?
Do you want to know what I mean by that?
Can you explain it to me?
Would you like to play it and then figure it out?
Great, and we'll just keep going and going.
Yeah. It's hard. Like, I'm not saying I always won these games, but I loved playing them. It was so much fun. And there is something about whoever asks the questions gets to set the frame.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's sort of just recognizing. But I do like what they're doing here, because they're asking more questions rather than trying to find answers for open your mind. And I think that's 100% true. And they're also putting the locus of control on the individual. And they're also putting it within the space of the inquiry. Like, the locus of control is trying to find out more of what's going on. And I can never not love that. That will always be good, no matter who's doing that.
I feel like there are, this gets into Chris Voss territory. Chris Voss was a hostage negotiator, and so has all sorts of negotiation skills of finding his way to a deal.
Yeah, that's pretty.
But there's a way, I feel like, if I were the Chris Voss of this world and I were to find out about the question game, I feel like there are other ways to win. Like, if you can ask me a question and at some point I'll just say yes, and I will hold the frame because of, yes, this is what I want. And there are, but that's maybe
it's not magical 100%, like always good, but it's
still worth, as I am 30 and I did not learn about question, like the subtle structure of questions in school. I did not learn about the subtle structure of questions in university. I had to read a bunch of random books about business development and meditation and a whole bunch more. And then even then, I didn't learn about the subtle structure of questions. I had to go find it myself so I could tell you people on the Psychotech Live podcast.
Yeah, this stuff is kind of advanced though. And
I wish someone would have taught me.
Yeah, this does show up, I think, I did learn a bunch about this because I went to religious school and there's sort of a,
like, what is a question? It's an amazing question. What is a question? And I've made some postulates, right? I've said this is what a question is kind of like. But
yeah, so for me, like that's what I was saying at the beginning. The question is an inquiry. It's a request for knowledge. This is how we were sort of taught about that. Yeah, and I remember hearing this whole speech that this rabbi gave that like kind of stuck with me, where he had the student and whatever, and the student something that wasn't a great student, and so he would just put the student in his office and they'd just sit there in silence until one day the student asks the question, "Why are we here?" It's like, "Oh, great question," and then he starts teaching him.
All right.
Because you can't teach someone, like you can never really teach someone, but they can learn
unless they ask. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So if they're trying to learn, then they'll learn something. If you're trying to teach them, you're doing it's like the thorn thing, but then they're fighting you. So
right.
You're just gonna stab them a bunch and they're gonna hate, and then you call it learning, and then they're gonna hate it forever.
Right. I think the other place I've seen this is I know a 1.5-year-old turning 2 soon, and there's a transition point between seeing the world and like that's a tree or that's a bird, and then being able to say what sort of bird is that, and that's a request for a deepening of knowledge and wisdom. And there's a 1-year-old doesn't have it. A 1-year-old has maybe that's a bird if they're starting to talk early, but later down the line comes questions. But it's because they don't have the structure of the mind that can start asking questions yet.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, you'll have to watch. You watch with Jack when he goes, like, before he is ready to ask questions, and then suddenly he'll be like, "What is?" Or like he'll be quite like, "How do I open this box and see what's in it? Like I must know more about reality."
Yeah, he I don't know that he has he does seem to have curiosity. He definitely has like fascination for sure. He's like constantly fascinated by things, like and delight, right, and that kind of stuff.
So there's curiosity, and then there's actually asking the question, which is it's like an expansion. It's not just curiosity. It's like belief someone else has the answer, or belief that the answer exists, and then the desire to ask for it. And
he can't do that yet.
No.
It's even hard to direct his attention at things.
Yeah.
To like, oh, look at this, right? Like he doesn't, like he like I'll point at things and then he grabs my finger, right? which is also one of the things, right? Like they're pointing at the moon, but they're looking at the finger, kind of.
Yes. All right, shall we continue the video?
Yeah.
I'm gonna share screen again.
Yeah.
By first finding what is yours to do, then building meaningful relationships with those whom you need to work with.
Ooh.
This is what we were talking about last episode, which, by the way, came up before this video, so we're not copying them.
Yeah. Interesting. Keep going.
This will open your heart.
And finally, by acting and creating from a place of integrity within your tribe, this will train your body to play game B.
There are layers.
Sorry?
There are layers here. Individual and collective is one layer here, right? So is it about you and what you want to do, or is it about your tribe and it's your place in it? Well, this is one of those, which one came first? They're both.
Yeah, I don't love that they're kind of. I love this. I love the matriarch stuff, and then the chief is I like the acting and creating from a place of integrity. I really like. And then within your tribe, it's like it makes me feel like they're trying to create a tribe called Game B, which I guess is like okay. I don't know if that's allowed.
They're allowed to do that. They're allowed to, I guess, make a Game B tribe. But what I see is black and white, like zebra effect, black and white effect, individual and collective. And like, is the collective there before the individual, or is the individual there? Okay, well, there's the collective there, but actually the collective is only there because I, the individual, can perceive it. So the individual is below that. Well, I'm only here because my collective brought me into existence. So the collective is before me. And then they're like, well, why did they bring in, but, and we can keep going deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
And I suspect it's something like, we can just keep switching between individual and collective an infinite number of times. And you're somewhere in the middle of an infinite stack of individual and collective.
Yeah.
Back and forth.
I actually very much agree and I like that perspective. I think people tend to go one side or the other, and really it's the symbiosis of.
So I prefer that, like it's just an infinite stack sort of thing. And they seem to have picked one side and the other. And they've associated certain things with one side and certain things with the other. So, but that's all right. You know, this is my judging one psychotechnology with a bunch of other psychotechnologies. So this is what they're setting up. They're setting up.
Yeah. The thing about the tribe I don't like is it like gives me all the red flags, really. Because what they're doing, this is the story of humanity, and we were living in harmony, and then the Fire Nation attacked. Sorry, I'm laughing at that joke.
Yeah, that was an Avatar: The Last Airbender joke.
Yeah, everything was fine. Everyone was getting along, and then the Fire Nation attacked, and now everything sucks.
It's crazy. So I'm going to diverge into Avatar: The Last Airbender because I'm a big fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender. But they have this universe where a subset of humans have control over an element. So there's the Fire Nation, the Water Nation, the Earth Nation, and the Air Nation. And some of the people in each of the nations,
they're nomads. They're not really nations.
They're nomads, right. But some of the people in each of the nations can control various elements, so they can throw water around using sort of some magical force that they have. But what a setup of a world that. What do you think the Fire Nation is going to do? They're the ones that got to burn things. Like it's hard because I don't know how you set up a multinational, magical power society like that without making the fire one the destroy one.
Yeah,
it would be very hard to do.
Well, Legend of Korra does that.
They sort of industrialized the society. They went from maybe a society 1,000 years ago with like bonus fire, water, wind, earth powers to like an industrial society with
and the fire people are all about the industry.
Yeah.
Which I really like.
Yes.
And they do sports as well. And
yes.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good use of that.
So it was, it's just like, can you imagine if The Last Airbender was actually the Water Nation was the one that attacked every other nation? Like, it's just not going to go there.
Yeah, it doesn't vibe. I like I like how they did the negative side for the Earth Kingdom. So the Water Nation, they have the ice, right? So those are like some of the bad guys are like they're cold, right? Or blood bending, which is like also like that lends itself to just bad shit. But what was I gonna say?
The Earth Nation, the fine.
Oh yeah, the Earth Nation, where they're stuck in their ways and they have the rigid structure. Right. Like Bossing say, there's no problem with Bossing say or whatever the line is. And the emperor, and this is how it is, and that's how it is, and they're not able to shift or to move, and so they're stuck there. And then you have like the air nomads were just like very like airy, like they couldn't do anything.
They were almost irrelevant in their cultural existence because they were nomads, and so when the Fire Nation attacked them, they got extinguished pretty quickly.
Yeah, and look at the show. They weren't. I guess they were somewhat nomadic, but they had temples and stuff. But I guess you could still be nomadic.
I think the proposal would be they flew around and visited the various temples and places.
Yeah, and they used the bison, right? I don't know if they ate the bison or something. Because no, they were vegetarians, so they wouldn't have eaten the bison, but they probably rode them to go to different places.
Right. So the thing I want to say about the tribe here is that there's a very fine line between tribe and cult. And I think that's what's bothering you, that tribe is getting closer to cult.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, it's setting off all my red flags.
Right. But now there is a tribe that's like, the hippies do tribe things, like you finally fit in, here's a bunch of people who are accepting and welcoming, and that's really nice. And then there's a way in which all the hippies got subverted into cultish behavior anyway, even though they didn't intend to. Like in the
I don't know that they all did. Like I think a lot of
not all of them. No. The hippie culture opened itself to a bunch of cults popped out of hippie culture in the 60s.
Yeah, but that's what's going to happen when you start doing like intimacy.
Right.
You're going to have people that like that's a hard thing to actually like do properly.
Yeah, look, for all of the benefit that drug culture in the 60s had of opening people up, they were suddenly super naive to being manipulated and being caught up in cults, which is a real shame. Anyway, that's history. That's a whole nother psychotech episode.
Yeah, we should do that one sometimes.
Right,
but that's what I'm saying. Like it's setting up a red flag because they're doing this grand narrative about how the direction civilization should go, and then they're doing this like a little switcheroo. Like you have to ask questions about how you fit into game B, and it's like, like you kind of went into tribe without acknowledging that.
Yeah.
If they said, well, there's this tribe of people who are doing these things and you should join us, like it would be a little more like the red flag would be on the outside where it's like, okay, well, this is a thing and there are risks, and then the people are making the informed decisions. But with this one, it feels like they just slipped into that. And I don't know if it's on purpose or what.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to start judging them and stuff, but yeah, it does raise my large red flags.
Yep. Yeah, they're trying to get their model in there deep. This is the reality.
Yeah, they're not doing it properly. Like you have this is what I fucking love spiral dynamics. Like you have the tribe first, and then you have the later stuff after. And I think that makes more sense. Where it's like, oh, these are my people, right? This is like nowadays would be a lot of like I'm from the hood or whatever. Like I'm from the neighbor. Like I have this neighborhood, and that's where I'm from, and I'm always going to remember my origins and where I come from. Like that's their tribe, but then they can go out and do the other things. They don't need to. They don't necessarily, they want to like share that culture, but they don't. There's sort of a natural enforcement that happens if you confuse these levels, I think. And it becomes very like authoritarian. Like I have the answers and you don't, because you weren't there and you're not part of this tribe.
Yeah.
So I'm not really looking forward to the fallout of Game B where everybody goes crazy and it's like just communism or something again.
Yeah. Well, all right, let's keep going.
The more you keep these wisdom centers open and sustain the principle of wholeness within yourself, your tribe, and the world, the less the parasite will have influence over you.
Is that it? Oh no. Right. So what were the three wisdom centers? Do you remember what they were?
So they had the matrix, they had the tribe, and the mind.
It was way early.
Those are the wisdom archetypes. I wouldn't have been this far.
Right, so we're at 12 minutes, 50 seconds if you want to jump back.
Yeah.
Oh, there are three arcs. I see. It didn't.
Oh, yeah. So ask your questions, I guess.
Oh.
Asking more questions than trying to provide answers will open your mind.
By first finding what is
So
yours
asking questions,
to do,
finding what's yours,
then building meaningful relationships with
Which,
those who
yeah,
are
that was our
not
episode like that.
This will open your heart.
And finally, by acting and creating from a place of integrity.
Which are the three archetypes that they're going for?
Right. So interestingly, they have. So here's one I don't think you've seen. They're the Dantean system. Have you ever heard of the Dantean system?
No.
Okay, so the Dantean system is a system of three wisdom centers, which I think now I've realized that they are alluding to, and they are the head, the heart, and sort of in the belly or the gut. Head, heart, hara. They come from Asian cultures with a proposal that obviously the heart is connected to relationships, heart space, love, emotion. The gut is connected to deeper purpose, and the head is connected to intelligence, the mental wisdom, which is, our society is quite dominated by the mental wisdom at the moment. And a proposal from the Dantean system is to balance the three centers.
I disagree with that domination by that, but yeah, continue.
You don't think our society is currently dominated by intelligence?
I think maybe the places we hang out with are, but
yeah, I take your point. There are probably bits of society that aren't dominated by intelligence as much as my bit of society is, but man, society is all brain.
yeah, for sure. But also, like a lot of that's also by
put in a lot of work to add the meditative and add the embodied and add the heart space stuff, and I've got a long way to go to get more of that. But I definitely came from the brain first society.
Mm-hmm. I tend to do that as well, which I'm not necessarily endorsing anymore. But also, it's like if you think of this as the relationships, this would be, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And like I think that's very true in society, and that's like connections.
Right.
That would be like, I guess, the game A version of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the doing, which is like very startup, where it's just, you don't need to know, just do the thing and you'll figure it out as you go along. So I do think that these exist within our society. It's just
so they exist, or these as drive type structures or wisdom centers do exist. We just don't, in the West, we do not see them as their own entity, their own structures. We're like, well, obviously we're driven, obviously we look for meaning, but we don't see them as the three centers in the same way that the Dantean system really points.
Yeah, I think there is something about putting this together and having a holistic view of this that's super useful. In Judaism, it's
the Stoa really likes the some of the early psychotech. They like the Dantean type stuff. They like these things. So chances are that actually did get.
Dantean, is that a religion or?
The three Danteans, Dantians. I think it's because you got Chinese, in which they don't really have religion because it all got stamped out. It's sort of philosophical, and it's also Japanese a bit. And again, not so much religious, just systems of philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Anyway. In Kabbalah, I think this would be Chachma Bina Das, so wisdom, understanding, and knowledge.
So here's the thing: the Kabbalistic system has 10 Sephirot.
Yeah.
And there's a proposal of this is 3, right? There are 3 wisdom centers. So you can take the system of 10 and massage it in some way and try and say that it fits into the system of 3, but you're gonna struggle to do it. Or you can say that these 3 are the
no. There's 7 other ones that are just not this.
Right.
Like this is 3, but this is also it's sort of its own set.
So you can do a thing, and you can take the 7 chakra system, and you can be like, well, the mind is the third eye, the heart space is the same heart space, and then you've actually got the root, and then the sacral and the solar plexus, like you've got 3 sort of.
And then there's the connection between them, which would be the which would be another 2.
Can you mess up the 3 system into a 7 system? Can you mess up the 7 system into a 10 system? You probably can. I would
no, I'm not shoehorning this in. I'm saying that, like, there's this concept, and this is what they're talking about.
Right. So,
but it's a little bit different.
Would be that each of these systems are trying to be the whole system, right? So one person said there's 3, another person said there's 7, and another person said there's 10 Sephirot, right? And so somehow you need to account for the way things divide differently, and I would propose that you can kind of line them up to each other in different ways. And if you divide the whole system into 3, you'll get something like the Dantians. If you divide it into 7, you'll get something like the chakras. And in fact, there's other chakra systems with 12 or more. And if you divide it by 10, you get something like the Sephirot. It's funny because no other culture has 10 quite like the Sephirot. It's quite an unusual mathematics, like you see all the angles and stuff. It doesn't matter.
I'm still trying to figure that one out. I think Judaism orients differently. I think there's actually something really special about it, because it like the chakra system is like your energies, what's happening with you, but Judaism is not about like there's God and it's all powerful and all encompassing, but your actions still, like you still do things with God, right? When you do the sacrificing, you're sacrificing to God, even though it's not really you that needs it, it's not God that needs it, it's, I guess, that relationship or something.
Sort of relationship thing, yeah.
Yeah, so Judaism is always very much action in the world and orienting in that way.
Judaism and the mystical branch of Judaism looks very different to Hinduism, looks very different to Christianity, and the mystical branch of Christianity looks very different to Buddhism and the spiritual branch of Buddhism. Judaism seems to be its unique thing, whereas Hinduism sort of blends into the tantric Buddhism when there's like a blurry line there in Vajrayana and Hinduism, whereas Christianity also doesn't look like Judaism at all.
Yeah, because I mean we predate that, right? Like we predate all this stuff,
right?
Maybe I don't know, Buddhism or something. Like Hinduism would be maybe around the same age, but and then I guess Zoroastrian is allegedly older, but there's like in the competition, like there's still like a competition for this kind of stuff, I guess. And if anyone knows game made competition, it's Jews, because they're always getting but still we're around, so
all right, so let's keep going with this video.
All right,
did you want to go to 1250?
And finally,
the more you keep these wisdom centers, or parasite will have influence over you.
Oh, is this Game B?
I love these utopias.
The story of Game B is not yet written, nor
not biased at all.
its potential
Perfect,
is real.
yeah, with floating ships and nice glass dome. Yes, that is my show.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is they're like, oh, join our tribe and we'll make this happen. And like, it's, again, this is red flags, because they're even using this utopian vision that like fucking like would have been out of date 50 years ago.
Right. So I think and this is a big psychotechnology concept as well. So when you take a utopian vision, right, and you hold a utopian vision too strongly, what you end up with is a shadow of that utopian vision, which is the inverse, utopian hell. And if you hold utopia too strongly, you end up with too much of that like negative dystopia. And so I would invite skepticism of anyone who orients around utopia, because if you try to aim too hard at utopia, you get dystopia.
Yeah.
So instead, utopia is great. Just keep it.
Everything has to be perfect. That means anything that's not perfect gets the axe.
Right. So if we keep utopia, but like safely far enough away that the dystopia also stays far enough away on that side, and then maybe we can be in a like pretty good world in the middle there. But
so what do you think is like the correct distance? You think like we'll hit a utopia in 10,000 years is like far enough away that people aren't gonna start doing crazy shit, but
right, we don't need to keep up
enough
now because they don't.
We can work towards it.
Right. Yeah. If you say 10,000 years ago we were murdering people we didn't like, 10,000 years from now.
10,000 years ago we were barely human, and in 10,000 years we'll be past human.
Right.
Like we'll be post-human.
Great. All of us.
We don't need eugenics right now, right?
We don't need to do eugenics now because we'll just get there anyway. Yeah.
And then in 5,000 years, they can just go and say 15,000 years ago. Yeah, there's a formula for this. Like the things, I think the expected life calculation for things is how long they've been alive for. Or for this is for ideas.
Oh, like how much longer?
Yeah, you would expect the life of an idea to last however long it's been alive for. I guess that's just the base rate though. Right?
Yeah, I'm gonna put a big question mark there, and let's go on. Let's go
I don't
on.
know if that's true, but yeah, that's I forgot. There's a name for it.
The conditions.
Oh, another thing that they're doing is they're doing like this possibility space where it's the potential is real. Huh?
That's nice.
Yeah, and I think that does do a bunch of leeway, but also not as much as they think it does.
For life to thrive.
The challenges that face humanity are far too complex for one person or tribe to fathom. The crises we see, ecological, political, social, and educational, are interconnected. To face this meta-crisis, we must consciously revitalize our tribe's special ability to adapt quickly with a co-creative strategy of culture. And we must do so in a bioregional mesh network across the globe.
Throw some jargon in there.
No. Okay. Two things. First off, I want to say like this kind of stuff where they're saying, well, we need the other tribes. So we're the Game B tribe and we're going to need other tribes and we need to adapt and stuff. It does decrease the red flagness a little bit for me.
Yeah. I see a paragraph full of buzzwords. They're like
this one. Okay, let's break this down because I think this actually means something.
It does mean something, but I see meta crisis, which if you've never heard of, that's a
joke. You've heard of meta crisis.
You have. Not everyone else has, but you have. Revitalize our tribes. Co-creative, bioregional. What the heck is a mesh network? All right, whatever.
Yeah, so okay, so let's break this down. To face the meta crisis, so the meta crisis is essentially like the crises of crisis, right? So it's like you have all these crises that exist in the world today, and it's obviously because the way our society is structured that it causes a bunch of these things to happen.
I heard of
I think the leading people say
I heard of a new one recently. It's called the legitimacy crisis, and the proposal is that we're in this meta crisis sort of thing. Like there's many things going wrong, but what it is it's a battle for which crisis is the more legitimate crisis, like which one takes precedence over the other ones. So to concretize this, I remember 2 years ago we were complaining about plastic straw. I wasn't, but society was complaining about plastic straws, and then the pandemic hit. And clearly the pandemic is the bigger crisis than the plastic straw crisis that we were dealing with at the time. And we got rid of the plastic straws, but then we immediately forgot about that and started dealing with the pandemic. Like the pandemic is the bigger crisis. And now leaving the pandemic, we're going to have an economic crisis because we had to screw up the economy to manage the pandemic.
Well, I don't know that we had to, but we did. Yeah,
we did. Well, it would be hard. I don't envy anyone running society at the moment because it's very hard to run society during a pandemic.
Let's table that one for later. But yeah, like that is what happened. Yeah, I like this. Like the meta crisis. There's this meta crisis of always like figuring out which crisis is most important and things like that. I don't want to like technically that would be like sort of a post meta crisis, a meta post, like a meta on meta crisis, which would mean like a deconstruction of the meta crisis, but I think the world's not ready for a post meta crisis.
I don't see that as very far away because all you need to do is feel multiple crises, be like, oh, that's really bad, and then oh, that one's also really bad, and that one's also really bad, and just stay close enough to that for 5 minutes. You only need to be there for a little bit of time before you're like, okay, I need to work out which one to deal with first.
Yeah,
like,
and this is a meta
crisis, but it's only like 3 seconds after realizing you're in the meta crisis are you like, now what?
Well, okay, for you because these are your natural like this is what we do, so we're like very much
all right,
like
maybe everyone's
but this is what
getting the hang of, there's actually a lot of meta crisis. There's many things going on.
Yeah, and there's a space where all these all coexist at the same time, or in the same like general location. But this is what I was saying before about the oneness, where you have all these things, you group them together, and then you step outside and look at the group, right? Like you're creating God. Like, I don't want to say creating God, but you're doing that movement that if you did it for existence would equal God. But yeah, so like, yeah, I actually like this idea of like one of the crises is which crisis that we do, and I think EA does a really good job of this. Like, this is really what EA, or no, I don't know if they do a good job, but they are working on this.
Never answering
the best job.
I saw them as sidestepping the question. I went to a few effective altruism conferences. I spoke at a few conferences too, and from my perspective, you walked in the door at the effective altruism conference, and they said, "Do you care more about poverty? Go to the poverty talk. Do you care more about diseases? So go to the disease talk. Do you care more about animal suffering? Go to the animal suffering talk. Do you care more about existential risk, AI, nuclear, what else?
Biohazard.
Right. Go to those talks." And they just split people up. They didn't do the like, which one is actually more important talk. Well, they tried not to. Maybe they did have one that was like,
they don't
about which one matters more. But really, which one matters more to you is an intuitive step of, what do I care about? And then
how do I think the world exists is a big one.
Right. And which one
what's actually happening?
So there's ways to decide this. One is, which one am I going to be able to contribute to? So I don't think I know enough about AI, but maybe I know enough about biology. Which one matters personally? Like, I grew up in poverty myself, and therefore I'm going to care more about that than the animals. Maybe I didn't grow up in poverty, but I saw the animal suffering and I care more about that. Like, there's different ways to decide this, but basically, once you've decided, let's not question your decision. Let's just direct you to the place where it is.
No, I want to reorient you towards this, because I've been in EA for a while. So when you go to the meetups, that's what they do the whole time. Right? It's like,
about which one's more important.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Maybe your local ones. I need to get along to my
at least in Toronto, a lot of like we spent someone built a whole chart for this. Like, we did like calculations, and your disk unit. We had this whole thing. We were going to just build the because everyone does this on their own, and so we're just going to build a a calculator where you just put in all the. Actually, we should still do this. If I got funding for this, I would definitely put this stuff together. Which you would essentially just put in all your values, like how you value things at. It would have a bunch of questions. You put in what you value, and then it would just calculate it out for you. And we're going to use something like guesstimate. I think it's guesstimate, where like you would have the whole flow chart. So you'd have like a easy user interface, and then it would automatically propagate all the numbers in, and then you would get spit out the answers, and you'd be able to go back and see each calculation, why we're using what modifiers we're using, and they would be linked to the where the data is actually coming from. And then that way you could have it very, very simple for normal users to use it. And then on the back end, like the EA people would just come in, and you could have competing charts or competing like flow charts or competing data sets of people. That way you could know what you actually think. And then it would also generate a verifications, like, oh, you think this many chickens is worth this many humans. Right. That means that this thing is then true. Do you agree with that?
Right. So
if you say yes, then you've verified.
I'm imagining sliders, right? So you have a slider that is like, how many cows is one human life? And let's say you have one 25-year-old, and we're gonna one human life, right? And we don't specify, maybe 100 cows is one human. And then how many chickens is one cow? Maybe 1,000 chickens is one cow. And then you can be like, okay, wait, but what if the human is already 90? Does that mean they're worth less cows? And what if
right
25? And then you got the human longevity thing, and then you got like, I could see that playing out very interestingly.
You could do crazy stuff like this. and also like there is sort of a way to build in deontology as well, like where it's certain actions and stuff. Like there is, you can kind of build that. It doesn't necessarily have to be pure utilitarian.
You can also do like quality adjusted life years. Like, what if the person
quality
is already sick? What if the person is already missing a limb or something? Are they worth less than they were when they had all their limbs?
Right, and that's a real question, like in EA, because you get places, you get like poverty places where I don't know if I should say this, but yeah, this is a question that some people struggle with. I'm not saying what my opinion
Maybe
is.
I can let me name this from a different perspective. So there's a book called How to Measure Anything.
Yeah.
I'm big fan of this book. But the proposal,
like classic EA.
The proposal is you can measure everything. And if you think you can't, it is because you are self-deluded or lying to yourself or avoiding making an uncomfortable measurement. But a relevant example is that you're running a hospital. You can either spend $1 million on a new X-ray machine or take that $1 million and put it to other uses, like buying supplies for a different department that can maybe the X-ray machine can X-ray 1,000 people this year. But if you just take that $1 million and put it elsewhere, you can actually treat a lot more wounds in a lot of different circumstances. So should you buy the one machine that can treat fewer people, or should you buy the supplies that can treat many, many more people? And the point of the question is not one of them is right and the other is wrong. It's that you must make a choice, because if you don't make a choice, you are implicitly choosing neither as well, and that also stinks.
Yeah, counterfactuals. Yeah.
So, and not only
counterfactuals exist whether or not you look at them.
Right, but there must be some way to line up these two choices, even if it's like, well, I feel like doing this way. Okay.
Yeah, and there almost always is, and
it's uncomfortable to do.
And it's like this stuff is actually like a lot simpler. Like once you learn it, it's pretty simple to actually just sit down and do it. It's the problem I found we kept running into. We had like all these projects, like all these like great ideas for projects. We had like, you know, a bunch of like the skills, the knowledge that we could just put it together, and then it always came down to limiting funding.
I would have thought it came down to we really enjoyed coming up with ideas and having ideas and not actually doing the things.
No,
that's what happens.
No, look, that happens at first. That always happens at first. But once you've been doing it for like a year, you're like, okay, I'm sick of this. Like, let's just do this stuff already.
Right.
You know, at the beginning, it's like that. You show up and you're just so happy to talk to people about these ideas. Yeah. But then it's like, I'm fucking frustrated. I had enough of this. Like, let's just do this thing. Otherwise, because what happens is the calculation, the expected value of having the conversations goes down to zero very quickly.
If you talk it, your expected value is zero.
Yeah, because why are we talking about any of this stuff? Like we will produce no qualities from this unless we're enjoying the discussion. And so it becomes very, am I enjoying this right now or not? And then you know, that's like it's into like the internal experience stuff. But it just winds up becoming man, there's so many things where we're like, well, we could just do this, and we like start to put together a proposal, and it's, well, who's gonna fund this?
All right, let's finish the video. Let's keep going.
But I think this actually explains a lot of the spaces. Is where is the funding coming from? Oh no, wait, I wanted to do the sentence. I want to break down the sentence. I think people should understand what's going on.
Want to put it back up there?
Yeah, let's share the screen again. Because this does mean something.
Break it down for me, Daniel.
That's not. Sorry. It means okay. I'm gonna get on the right thing. Okay, so to face the meta crisis. So we talked about what the meta crisis is. We must consciously revitalize a tribe's special ability to adapt quickly. So they're doing a bunch of things here. So first off, consciously, like they're signaling the awareness, the consciousness, which is like the whole meditation, all enlightenment, all that stuff. Revitalizing, as in they're recognizing that whatever structures that we create today are going to be dead tomorrow, right? Today's cutting edge is tomorrow's stuck in the past.
Right.
and so they're trying to keep like it perpetually alive by doing this. Our tribe's special ability to adapt quickly is like, this is what they're trying to name game B as, is we're game B, we're a tribe, and our special ability is to adapt quickly. So if you can't adapt quickly, you're not really part of our tribe. So this is interesting because they're setting up like a membrane here, where this is what it means to be game B, this is what it means to not be game B. And then the co-creative strategy of culture. So I don't know what they're referring to about this. This has been like a thing I've been missing for a while.
Culture is a very interesting phenomena because no one is in charge of it, and it does adapt quickly, right? Culture just keeps changing.
Everyone's in charge.
Right, everyone's in charge of it. So if you care about culture, you care about everyone being in charge of it or everyone contributing to it.
Not necessarily.
Well,
Like if you're wanting that kind of culture, which they may or may not want. So there's a co-creative strategy. And so they're adopting quickly the co-creative strategy of culture, which means like co-creative meaning like multiple people are creating. It's not like a hegemony or like this like pure hierarchical or something, or like head. So they're trying to I think protect against like a populist or like like one person as the populace.
mm-hmm.
And then there's a strategy of culture. I don't know what they're referring to. This must be it though. Like this video that they're making is a strategic move in the co-creation strategy of culture.
Mm-hmm.
So we can like kind of backwards figure out what their strategy is by this video. But like this is a big question mark for me.
Okay.
And we must do so in a bioregional mesh network across the globe.
Okay. We can't currently feed people in bioregional mesh networks at scale. Like we can't do food at like we most of our food.
This is the opposite, I think. I think that's the opposite.
Well, they're trying to. Well, if you want a bioregional.
What is a bioregional mesh network? Maybe I don't know what that is.
Well, they're proposing lots of small hubs where maybe we eat food from. Well, classically, it's we eat food from our local hub rather than. So maybe everywhere 10 kilometers from my house, I will try and source all my food from nearby, and then there's lots of them everywhere, and then we can swap between little hubs. But this is proposing a different.
We can swap food between hubs or people,
we can
or whatever
between hubs. But the point is that we care about our local culture, and then we interact with the other little small local cultures, and we do so while knowing that we're connected globally. But apparently, we have a much more capitalistic structure.
Yeah, but that's what we have nowadays. Like it's sort of like we have a farm, and then there's a farmer who takes care of the farm, and they sell to the local
capitalism. It's not a bioregion. Currently, we don't really care how far our food travels. Like
but it's a mesh now, a bioregional mesh network. I'm really like I just don't understand this. I'm not trying to argue.
Well,
but a bioregional mesh network across the globe, like if you're going to eat something that's grown from far away, I can
tell you what we have now. A mesh network is a term that I've heard from networking, like internet computing networking, which is that currently we have main servers of the internet, and then everyone sort of connects to their service provider, which connects to the main service. Right? This would be a mesh network is more like I have a
It's like a peer-to-peer.
Yeah. So there are people all over the place, and instead of connecting like to our service provider and to our hub to the internet, we connect peer-to-peer. And so the signal, if I want to send request information, I can send it to a peer who will send it to 100 other peers, and then it'll bounce its way back to me through the peer network.
I think that is kind of how the internet works. Just there's like sort of more intense nodes.
Yes, I think so too.
But
the proposal is
but
network is more like the localized peer-to-peer one.
Yeah, I do like the peer-to-peer, like that kind of stuff. And so I don't see, like, to me, this is like, okay, like this is good. right? This is what Uber does, or Uber Eats does, right? Where they'll connect you to somewhere close, and like I think they have. I don't really use it a lot, but I think they have like delivery depends probably also based on distance, and so they're biasing you towards eating at places that are close to you.
Oh,
And so if you had Uber Eats for restaurants, that would essentially be what they're talking about.
right. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's what
This makes sense to me.
bioregion network would be like that, but for the relevant.
Yeah, but everywhere. So Uber everywhere, but like Uber's already trying to do that, or Lyft or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also it sounds good, and I think they're also signaling their ability to think in the different levels of abstraction.
Yeah.
Because this video as well. People don't always. Oh, sorry.
They're signaling some kind of jargon power. They can.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We're trying to break down the jargon so people can understand it, not just call it jargon. Because these people like,
to use jargon, there's something very deliberate. Right. They are deliberately using this jargon in some way to signal to people to be like, where the jargon users, you should join us if you're also someone.
Yeah.
These jargons.
Yeah, I'd like to break this down because I think I have insight into this.
If you're smart enough to understand what a bioregional mesh network is, you're one of us.
Yeah. So it's three ways, right? Like it's people who want to know what this is get attracted to it, and then they have like that the peers, so that they can talk to each other, like signal, because these people need to signal to other people to let them know they exist and that they're willing to coordinate. And so depending on what language you're using and how you're constructing it shows other people how you want to relate or how you're thinking about it. So it signals that you understand this stuff. Because you want to, this is like, I think we have the same problems as well, or at least I'm thinking about us as the same problems as well, where we want it to be simple enough that other people can understand, people who are not in this space can understand what's going on, but also we want to, like, we don't want to look dumb so that the people that we want to work with are not going to want to work with us because they think we're too simple. So you kind of got to do both. I always think there should be like, when we do more with this stuff, there should be a front page for normal users and then like the technical page for nerds, and you kind of got to have both of those there so that both these people will show up.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Ready?
Yep.
Sorry, I feel like I talked a lot.
I want to get through the video.
Restoring this co-creative engine to the human tribe will once again allow cooperation to outcompete competition,
this is their plan,
leading to an exodus out of Game A.
Therefore, by the rules of Game B, the meta crisis cannot be solved by a single tribe.
Yeah, and they're doing rules here, which I think is hilarious. Because Game A has rules and you need to transcend the rules, but Game B has rules, which I think is also making people who are accustomed to rules feel welcome, but also like this is also a form of logic that they're using to explain to people. So once you get it, you listen to it, you can transcend it.
Yeah.
Key is to expand our intertribal cooperation to the global scale, and for this, we will need open and decentralized access to our Game A technologies, along with a culture rejuvenated by wholeness. Nature creates humans, humans create technology, and technology must be used to support the integrity of nature.
Game A's strategy of driving rivalrous innovation and production while continuing extraction must come to an end.
I do feel like the way they're setting this up, though, is a little bit of competition with Game A.
Yeah, there's a little mistake there. Definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know if sometimes these very smart paradigms don't see there's something called a performative contradiction, which is Habermas, which is to propose that the way they've created this dichotomy, they're competing with game A while saying we don't compete. We're not the competitive, we're the collaborative.
Yeah, like never say never. Like you're using that word that you're saying never.
Yeah. Right.
But that one can be self-aware. This one doesn't seem self-aware to me.
Eventually it'll be like, isn't it more fun to collaborate than to compete anyway? Like,
right.
Collaborating will win anyway. And
yeah, like that would be how they should go around doing it.
Yeah.
The heart of this co-creative strategy of culture is a space as we learn about our role as stewards, we will revive the principles of wholeness and regeneration. Like our own bodies, the Game Bee tribe must protect
we could
the
talk about
heart.
this picture here.
Say what?
Huh?
What did you cut out of it?
It's just interesting background. You got the kid playing hopscotch.
Yeah.
Like the laser with like the drone doing the lasers, and then you got the yoga and the, like this is like an aesthetic that's meant to, and like they just by the way the activities are doing it, like there's no industry here, there's no craftsmanship, there's no
there's the ships in the background, I guess, if you want to call them industry, possibly little floating ships. Nope, I think we've lost him.
where, oh, like the floating ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a little weak. That's like I think more evoking like pleasure, like leisure, looking around, or futureness, and even like the trees don't have fruits on them, which is not even like in the permaculture sense, right? Which is what I think, which is where I think they should be going anyway. Like that fits into the aesthetics. It would be to have all these trees. Permaculture, they even have like the grass is like mowed. It's not, you don't have the natural like the leaves and the branches all there like turning into compost, which would be a very much like restorative, the soil restoration.
This is a utopia they're observing, they're portraying or trying to anyway.
Right, but this is what they're seeing the utopia as, and to me this is there's a certain sterility to this that is not of like this is the wrong, like this is like 1950s like utopia or something, right? Like this isn't this isn't what someone who was inventing the utopia today would be drawing this, especially not from these people. Like they should be like this like permaculture is part of this stuff, right? Or at least some version of permaculture.
I feel like bookmarking that for a different Psychotechnologies live podcast, which is what is utopia? If I invented today, what would it look like?
Yeah, we should do this.
Okay, let's save that for next.
We could do this. We can outcompete these people.
Yeah, I will create the more infectious.
I say that self-awareness.
Yeah.
I say that with self-awareness.
Yeah.
We start by acting locally.
Oh yeah, acting locally. Where are the orchards or the fields or whatever? Like where's the food coming from? Like this is a huge amount of land that they're not using, but they're growing their stuff locally. Like maybe it's like hydroponics or something, but still I'd like to see that.
So I want to just take a moment to drop into politics.
Our economy.
There's a Twitter thread, and you know that this is going to be a trash fire because it's Twitter. Twitter thread that goes something along the lines of, "What will your job be on the leftist commune?"
Yes. Dude, that is my favorite meme.
And I love this meme because this Twitter thread, because you get people like, "I will be the librarian," great. And then there's variations of like, "I will cook food I will bake some things." So and then there's like, "I will be the gardener," and then like there's a great number of people taking non-stewardship roles on the leftist commune, and no one is actually doing the like core work stuff.
So that was my thing. I responded to one of these threads and I said, I'm going to run the nuclear facilities.
Right. Amazing. Wow.
I would fucking love to run a nuclear power plant.
Right.
But the man, it was a whole thing. Like the man keeps me down just because I don't know any nuclear physics. Now all of a sudden they don't put me in charge of running nuclear power plants.
Yeah, but so when you say where are the orchards in this image of local biomesh network thingy, you're right, because everyone's gonna do Pilates and play hopscotch, and no one's gonna grow the fruit and vegetables that people need to eat, let alone or maintain.
Even if I'm playing a video game like Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, which is essentially like Fallout 3.5, or was it 4? I can't remember, but there was a transition because the first one they didn't have any of that stuff, and then the Fallout New Vegas they have like it's not like fully like it's not necessarily realistic, but they do have like all these plots of lands where people are growing stuff, and there are farmers there, and then they're doing the things, and they get raids, and like that sort of situation. And like video games even add this stuff. Like you guys are trying to build a vision of the future. Whatever. Like
there may be a possibility of automating a bunch of our food growing stuff, but we're not there yet. There may be a possibility of automating a great number of survival-based technologies, especially gathering of electricity, like solar panels.
And I think that's definitely reasonable, right? Because especially now, like there's already you already can do vertical or horizontal or whatever growth inside. And if you're using lights, even if you're using solar panels, you should still be able to like have it more dense than if it was outside, because they're more efficient in terms of electricity. Yeah, I don't know if it's nowadays exactly like that, but it for sure will be, it will be more efficient to convert the sunlight through a solar plant, through a solar panel into grow lights, just because the lights.
I'm gonna be like, no, I know enough of the physics to say that doesn't work, because where a solar panel currently it's about 37% efficient, which is if you take a spectral analysis of the sun, you get a nice big curve, right? There's the photoelectric effect, which do you know the photoelectric effect?
That's where that's the effect that they're using to convert the photons from, let's say, sunbeams into actual electricity.
Right. So sometimes when you hit a piece of metal with energy from the sun, the photons from the sun, they hit an electron which jumps out of the metal, and then it jumps back, right? That doesn't happen for every wavelength. It only happens for wavelengths above a certain threshold.
Right. There's a certain spectrum which it picks up.
Right. So about a third of the sun's light, the sun's energy comes through an infrared and wavelengths that are below the photoelectric effect. About a third of it, we currently have solar panels that are 37-ish% efficient, I think. Is in the range for the photoelectric effect, and there's a range for which the photons just bounce straight off. They have so much energy that they don't actually transfer the energy, they bounce off and stuff like that.
Right.
So,
if it's too much energy or too little energy, it's not going to get it properly.
There's this window which we currently capture with the photovoltaic cell, which is about 36%, and it's never going to be 100% because of the photoelectric effect, because some of it is infrared.
Well, there are other ways of doing it. If you don't use solar panels, you can use something that will absorb the heat. And there's like other technology, but
you have a problem with heat, that you have an entropy problem, right?
But the entropy problem is gonna whatever. It's not important. Yeah, this is the standard technology that we're expecting.
That indoor grow lights were more efficient than the sun is. I think you got a challenge.
No, that's not what I said. It's not going to be more efficient than the sun. It's going to be more because like what you said with the solar panels only pick up a certain spectrum. The plants are the same way, but the spectrum is smaller.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you're picking up 37%
light that the plant needs to actually do photosynthesis.
Right. I think plants only need like 2% or something
Right.
of that. So a solar panel can do, you said it's 37%, which means it can do 15 something or 16,
That's a good
whatever.
thought to be having. I am beyond. This is congratulations. You hit the edge of my knowledge of physics and biology, and now I'm like, I don't actually know how that equation would go, but I'd be curious to find it out.
Yeah, and I love that you're like open and like curious about this, like and
Right.
making this. This is the thing I like that EA culture does.
Right. So there's something important that is, I should be confident in what I know, and then I should know what I don't know. So
Yeah,
you hit the line where I'm like, oh no, I actually don't know what's out there. I know what's in here.
yeah,
And I have to be honest, and I have to say, no, I don't know. I'll have to go do some research if I want to find that out.
yeah. That is so awesome.
Mm.
I don't know if that's so. I don't know today if technically that's true, but if it's not today, it will be at some point.
Maybe with some better research as to, I think that plants do something with quantum effects as well, that
Everything
to get the light wave to actually convert a photosynthesis within a cell is like the light has to bounce in a quantum pattern and do something ridiculously fascinating.
Yeah, I never got that light ATP connection.
Right,
like
right.
I never understood that. That
So-
always like, and then elves take the light and convert it into ATP, and we call it
Right.
photosynthesis.
Right. So I think it's something like a light wave has to hit an electron bond or something.
Yeah, and
Then
then
get a thing to
that jumps
chemical
up,
molecule to change into something else.
yeah,
But-
that jumps up a level. What's it called?
Yeah. Electron shell,
Yeah, what's it called? Valence.
valence shell. Yep.
Yeah, oh fuck, man. I didn't learn enough chemistry or biology.
This is the edge of my physics knowledge as well.
Yeah.
But I know there's something interesting going on there in the quantum, the way the light comes through.
Well,
But if
light
you
is
could make that
already-
more efficient, that would be interesting. And that may be genetic modification, and it may be filtering, sending light through in fancy ways. But
So
that's
plants can absorb it more. I don't know. I don't know. There's I think a bunch of directions that science can go from this.
all right.
But whatever it is, I think it probably will be a point where it's like a waste of space to grow food outside.
Yeah,
Which
maybe.
would be hilarious. But
Yeah.
still, I'd like to see some of that. And still, like that should still be an apple tree. Like if you're making it from modern day or some sort of fruit tree.
Well, there's something we don't realize about current animal industry. There's a benefit in that we can convert land that is not very fertile, as in it kind of grass will grow, but crops don't, into like animals eat that, and then we can eat the animals. In a way, we can't necessarily grow plants there because grow crop-based plants. So we can do that, but harnessing the meat out of an animal carcass takes a whole lot of waste meat as well. Like you have to support an entire body system. You need lungs, you need guts, you need all sorts of organs there. And we don't actually eat a lot of those organs. So there's a heck of a lot of wastage that goes through meat production. So as soon as we can get biological vat meat, that would be super exciting too, because
I think we
save
do, but
massive amounts of space, massive amounts
you can
of
see the
wasted
space.
energy.
The problem they're running into now, if I'm not mistaken, the bottleneck for this is that if you have a vat that is conducive for growing meat, it's conducive for growing everything, and like that includes
Contamination.
Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense.
So if I'm not mistaken, that's why it's expensive. But even that, there's another interesting, like now that we're talking about permaculture, Joe Stalin, something, like some guy, he does this like permaculture with animals, so that he has the cows go through, like he breaks up like a small part of the field, so they only have 1 day's worth of food, and they have to, or 3 days or whatever it is. But I think with him, it's 1 day's worth of food. So they eat all the food in that area, so that it gets all equally grazed. And then they move them on to different areas. So they're a different area every single day. So they get fresh grass, but they have to eat all the variety of stuff that's going on. And so that boosts up biodiversity, because normally cows will just eat their favorite food. It also increases the production of the land, because they're eating more of it or something. I don't know exactly how it works.
Okay.
And also what he does then, my favorite part is like 3 days after, he'll have that area, he'll put the chickens out. And so the chickens are going through all the cow poop and they're eating all the larvae and the flies and all the bugs, and they're scratching it out. So all the cow poop gets distributed nice and easy through the whole field.
Mm-hmm.
And then also he doesn't have to water the fields because he just waters the cows.
Right.
And the cows will be peeing and all that stuff. And it boosts up like the productivity. And he said that at the beginning, when he first got the fields, he couldn't put a stake into it when he was trying to do the section it off. He couldn't put a stake through it because there was not enough soil to drive poles into it. And now he's got like, I don't know, however many feet of soil just from the cows and the chickens doing their stuff.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, this is Australia's in an interesting position because we have sort of old land, as in land that has not been used for agriculture for so long, and so we've got the topsoil sort of blew away and got eaten and got consumed, and we've got we've got dirt, we've got sand, and we've got not very nutritious soils, and so we need to rebuild back up that top layer that is the cow poop and the plants.
There's I think the oldest permaculture thing, I wish I could remember these people's names, is in Australia, I believe. It's just this guy, he's like really famous in the permaculture. All the permaculture people be like,
I'm not saying it's not possible, I'm saying we have a bigger job to do.
But the like, I don't want to call it exactly like I guess the technology is there, or like the methods.
Yeah,
this is almost like
intensive, very intensive. Even like, if you have a paddock that's all the way over there and your cows, and you need to move your cows from here to there, you need to walk all the way over there, open the gate, get them to go through the gate, and then close the gate after them. And then you need to come back and do other things. That could take you half an hour. You've only got so many half an hours in a day. Now, even if you open the gate, if you build an automatic system that can open the gate, that automatic system will break down from time to time. The cows may not walk through the gate.
So
there's a lot of energy intensity to like farms just have this way of having an endless amount of work on them.
Yeah, that's true. This one he says, but you get more. He calls them cow days from the field, where it's how many days like.
There's a standard measure of there's something called a dry sheep weight, which is roughly the weight in which one sheep will eat per day. And I assume there's sort of an equivalent for a cow, but one cow eats this much per day.
He made that up, or if that's
no, there's a real measure of like sort of the same thing. And so you can predict if you have low quality pastures, there's less food there. If you have high quality pastures, there's more food there. But you still got that equivalent of how much does one cow eat a day?
Yeah. So he says that the fields produce much more by the way he does it, and then they produce more over time as the soil builds up. He says it's not that much work. I don't know if that's like he shows it. It's like it takes like really quick, and then because he builds the thing, he gets to look at every single cow every day.
Right.
So it's like better.
Okay, I don't know. I'd have to go do some research.
They have this one for the chickens, because the chickens will come home at the end of the day, and so this guy made a. This is the last one. We'll go back to the video. He made it so that that there was like a metal thing or whatever that was attached to the door, so that he could close the door. He would just use his gun and he would like fire across and hit it, and then it would close. So he didn't have, at night he could just close it from like he would just go out his kitchen window and shoot it closed. So he got really good at shooting too.
Wild. What a fun hobby he has, I must say, scaring all his chickens.
Well, they're all asleep, but it's so far away. But it does it every night. Like it probably doesn't bother.
I would have just put a string on it, so you could just tug it.
Well, I think it was far away. I don't know. Like I'm not saying this is standard procedure, because you could also just use a remote or something. But I thought it was hilarious.
It is. That's cute. All right, back to the video. Let's finish this up.
This time.
Oh, I gotta share this with you. It's the same screen.
They are interconnected by a global mesh with the assistance of our technology.
Tribe selection is the driving force of human evolution. What will distinguish us from our nomadic
Is that
ancestors?
true? Tribe selection is the force of human evolution?
No.
I don't think this is true. This is like partially true for sure, but
Well, the trouble
this is another thing. It's like tribe selection,
Well,
competing tribes. Like,
there's this really tricky to talk about problem of evolution, right? So evolution traditionally is survival of the fittest by the mechanism of natural selection, right? So that's evolution, right? It actually doesn't talk about tribe selection at all. It's unless you consider you're prettier than the next person and therefore you get selected, and that's natural selection. But natural selection,
the tribes themselves would also go through evolution as well.
well,
And
natural
they kind of-
selection is usually you got eaten by the lion because you were slower than the next person, right? That's a negative.
That's one way, but that would have been before tribes. Like now, it's also like picking which tribe, especially in our day and age. Like people, you survive and reproduce based off of which tribe you're part of is a big part of it.
Right. So when we take the traditional
If you're an incel, you're not getting very far.
right, we take the traditional definition of evolution and then we go, oh, actually it's more like this, it's more like this, it's more like a whole bunch of other things like you've described. People get selected for being good looking, people get anti-selected for having various problems. In fact, we do this thing currently in society where we keep our sick and our ill alive. And so some of those get to procreate and have kids, even though they're sick. So we're living in this relationship to evolution that's kind of different right now. We're living in a different selective process.
I think it's the same thing because like it's survival of the fittest, essentially survival of those most likely to survive. It's
Right.
just what the criteria, like what are the biggest things about that I think have changed from
Right. But it's not actually survival of the
on the
fittest.
right political party or something.
It's survival of anyone who isn't too slow and dies out. So you don't have to be the fittest to survive. You just have to be the ones that don't die out. So
You're saying it's like reversed instead of,
well,
I guess the norm is now to survive. So the game has shifted from don't get eliminated.
well, if you imagine like a Venn diagram, right? So survival of the fittest means that anyone who isn't fit, it dies, right? Dies by gonna make the basic, the lion ate them, right? Because they couldn't run fast enough, so the lion ate them. But actually, it's not that only the fittest survive. It's that only the single fittest survive. It's the whole range of anyone who is above a minimum fitness survives.
Yeah.
So actually,
But that's still around today, right? If you have an aneurysm, like you're gonna die, like
Right.
there's something they can do about that. But if you have,
if you have
it's just like
before you have
bar
the
has been
aneurysm,
raised.
then your genes. If you have kids before you have the aneurysm, then your genes survive.
Yeah.
Maybe depending on the what you give. them.
Yeah, and then there's the kids growing up without like in a single parent environment, and there's
Yeah.
things like that. But that's what I mean. Like there's a lot of these abstract effects that add up to decide if you're gonna continue or not. And then also they're gonna be multi-generational as well.
Right. So when we move from the survival of the fittest, so they said evolution is propagated by tribe selection or something like that, right? So we don't really have original evolution doesn't really talk about what the tribe selection thing is like and how that's kind of shaped society.
That's where like game theory and shit comes in.
Right. Game theory, we've got culture.
And other stuff. Just game theory is my favorite.
Right. So at some point, evolution needs to start doing this more. Evolution as a theory needs to start doing this more complex thing that starts to try and talk about what the heck is actually going on. Given that one, all the weak are dying anymore. Two, sometimes we like people because they just have red hair, and that's evolutionarily advantageous technically, and they got selected, but not based on survival fitness, but based on preference.
That's sexual selection.
Selection,
which is like the other half of evolution.
Right. And so, but evolution isn't that basic equation anymore. It's this really complex one as we start talking about it like this.
Sort of.
So
I don't think it ever was necessarily, like it was
No,
probably.
it was never. But when we officially,
But yeah, like the dumb
Darwin named survival of the species, he really tried to simplify it.
Yeah, yeah, because
Now we need to nuance.
he was doing, Darwin was doing evolution with the title of it is evolution of on origin of species by through natural selection or something.
Right.
So he was talking about the natural selection as in what are the things that are happening before humans show before, let's say, like homo sapiens
Right.
or
So when we start talking about humans, we're talking about some different puzzle that is not quite like evolution. There's definitely still some
evolution. It's just not. It's your physical prowess doesn't matter as much.
Or the lines that matter. I guess if you're talking about lines of development, the lines are different.
The things that matter, and I think that's why like we're talking about like the different systems of like the chief would be sort of representing what would happen before humans got around, and then you have that matriarch where you're having the relationships, and then you're having the knowledge, which I'm sort of putting it this way, but I'm not rigid.
In theory, we should see a progression from pure math to physics to chemistry to biology to natural selection to sociology. Like there should be a clear line that runs through them that connects a thread that connects all of these theories. In practice, what we have are big gaps where we don't know how to explain the connection of one to the next and then this one to the next one. Pure math doesn't quite connect to physics. Physics doesn't always connect to chemistry, usually does. Chemistry doesn't always. We don't know every step between chemistry and biology and sociology.
We need the missing links.
Right, there's huge missing links in between biology and whole species competition and whole species competition in sociology and society, and like so we're dealing with these great blind spots in between. We're fleshing them out and trying to connect them, but we still have a way to go.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
All right.
I think it is interesting though, like just as a side point, that all these transcend and include, because they're all higher layers of abstraction. So physics transcends and includes math. Because physics never contradicts math.
This is some integral theory stuff.
Yeah.
Where the proposal is reality is a continuous thread through all of them, but we've done a lot of research and we've created levels in which we chop the stack and then observe what's going on through this way, and then later chop the stack and observe what's going on through here.
Yeah, because things I think also things tend to coalesce, like just like you have the chakra systems, like really the energy just goes through your body, but it tends to pool in certain places. Like the things that you value tend to pool in certain places.
Yes.
And I think also like you would have like the different poolings in science would be math, physics, biology, whatever.
Yep. We're looking forward to the future of cross-disciplinary research. That'll be exciting. Anyway, the video. Let's finish.
I think Psychotechnologies can have a good play in this.
Oh yeah, Psychotechnologies will connect up psychology, sociology.
To me, Psychotechnology is, well, it's going to be people that are doing this, right? It's not going to be, I mean, it might be AI to a certain extent, but even if it's AI, the people doing the AI are going to want to understand how these things work.
Yeah.
Operation on all scales, from the individual player to the neighborhood.
We got a whole lot of thing going on.
To the tribe.
Yeah, they're doing the layers of abstraction.
We beat them to it. Amazing.
To the city, to the bioregion.
To get there.
Yeah.
To the globe.
To the universe.
And someday across the galaxy. Like the fungal
Wait, they stop at galaxy, we go to universe. Oh yeah.
They're right. You should be going to solar system, to galaxy, to universe, but
right. Yeah. Fair enough.
System of channels for cooperation and movement will enable us to respond to the global challenges we face.
The work required to achieve this vision is today incomprehensible.
But it is time to play.
Every day you must return to the symbol of wholeness to loosen the parasite's grasp. By keeping your wisdom centers open, you can let go of your conditioned ways of being.
This makes sense to you, right? Like that, the sentence made sense?
It did, but only in a, I guess so. Like you, if you keep returning to wholeness as I guess you can frame it like a psychotechnology. Remember the wholeness of your being, right? Will that invite you into more collaborative game B styles ways of being? I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but I'll let them postulate such a connection.
I think it's true. I think you should be in the wholeness, but they're saying return to it because this is sort of a bridging step.
Yeah, I'll let it slide.
I actually agree with this. That this is the psychotechnology of interconnectedness, is to be in that space.
I'm not as certain that it is the case that one follows from the other, that wholeness connection and game B follows from wholeness. Because wholeness also includes many individuals doing their own damn thing, competing against each other.
Yeah.
So you may see your wholeness and then decide you want to win. That I may connect to my wholeness.
But keeping your wisdom sensors open while you're doing the wholeness, even if you're competing, you're going to notice the collaborations much easier. I think if you're doing, like, I think counterfactually, if you're in this place where you're in the wholeness and your wisdom center is open and you're still competing, you were going to also compete in the other one. So it's not a guarantee. It's just it shifts the balance.
I think they've done the thing where they've created a dichotomy that is further apart, whereas I think it's a horseshoe. But keep going.
I still like it though.
Yeah.
Lead with your strengths and find others who are committed to do the same. Make sure that your tribe has strengths in all three forms of wisdom, and that
Charles Eisenstein. So Charles Eisenstein sort of sends this message: lead with your strengths and find others who will do the same. That he was. This is going to be like the most butchered version of his thing that you've ever heard, because I haven't actually read his book, but he was in a movement of.
You read the tweets, you know it.
I haven't even read the tweets. He was in a movement of people who were really concerned about the climate, and he saw some kind of existential burnout amongst his peers and people where they cared so much and they felt like they had no power to do anything. And he wrote a book and suggested that there's a different message here of your job is not to save the planet yourself, but to be a good cog in the machine of do your job and support other people doing their job. And that's going to be more helpful as we all work out how we're going to save the planet, as opposed to yourself being the one who has to protest and has to hold the rally flag of doing the thing. If instead you let other people do their jobs and you let you do your job, then the world becomes a better place.
Yeah, 100% true.
They're sort of alluding to Charles Eisenstein's message there. All right, you want to share again? Keep going.
Yeah.
So close. Only a few minutes left.
You're like just wanting to get through this.
Yeah, I want to get to the end. I want to make sure that we cover the whole thing.
To finish it.
to respect each other's roles. Then and only then can you start to play Game B.
There is a future of thriving that awaits us. It would be a shame to miss it.
Interesting, because I didn't realize that Eisenstein was underneath Game B, but okay, I would believe it. He fits.
Or not. Like, I also independently came up with this when I realized that I was trying to do things that weren't my job. And also I have this in my relationship as well, where sometimes one of us tries to do something that's not their job. And, because it messes up the system, then we like the engine seizes. It's like, no, go back. You're doing, like, this is your job. You do this. This is my job. I'm doing that. We trust each other. Just like let it happen. And if you want to verify after, you can.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. And for the record, it's not gender stereotypes. It's whatever plan we agreed on that we're middle with.
Right. Collaborative stereotype. We work together in different roles.
Yeah. I'm thinking of a specific example that I don't want to say.
Okay. Imagine being the person who played the computery role thing.
Oh yeah, this is CGI.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
I thought it's a person.
I think it's CGI.
Nah, that's a real human. Come on, she got hair and wisps hanging out.
No, look at her shoulder skin. They can do hair wisps. All right, let's go.
All right, we're done. Hooray!
We'll leave the credits while we
Sure.
close up. Yeah, so Jim Rudd is one of the big guys in this space.
Cool. So I don't know if I agree with their full message, but I can let most of their message like sit on the table as a proposal.
Yeah, I feel like I don't have to necessarily say it because I said all the things that I was thinking while they were happening. So I feel like what do I think of it? Like you just heard that. I am annoyed a little. It's like grandiosity that's kind of sticking with me, but
yeah, it's
also hard to contextualize this, I think.
I consider myself to have the psychological resilience that I can see them attempting to, like I said, implant a story deep into my level of metaphysic, and I can be like, thank you for the proposal. I will choose whether I accept it. But I recognize, as you said, that some people just don't know history. Some people just don't get how things are, and they're gonna get this like injection into the deep level of their way of being, and they're gonna be stressed about it.
Yeah. The thing is, I think, so there's definitely that, which I think what we're doing is designed to counteract that. Because
hopefully if you've seen this conversation, you're like, oh, I've seen all the psychological tricks and I will choose healthily. And it's not because we're better than them, it's that we prefer to choose.
Yeah, well, we're normalizing this. They're like, oh, this person, they're saying this and they have these ideas and stuff. And now it doesn't get like stuck in you that it's because it's like spacious, right? So
I believe it's hard to.
You're in this playground. You're not being. It's not being inserted into you. You're in this space where you're exploring.
I can see how difficult it is to spread a story and to propagate a meme like this. Like they're taking on a hard job as they try and do it. So I want to say like kudos, well done for that.
Yeah.
It was
also a thing is I want to say about in that vein is that we are reviewing this and so we are amplifying that signal.
Yeah.
Which is a thing.
And I'm willing to amplify that signal.
Yeah.
I am
like in this way.
I would tend to say like there's a slightly different signal that is both, it's still like a game B philosophy, which is that if we live in a world that is zero sum, then we're a bit trapped because we can never, the only way for me to get something is to steal it from you. And so the more I believe the world is zero sum, the more I will try and steal things from other people, and the more they will try and steal from me. And I'll live in this antagonistic way of being that really kind of sucks. But the more that I see things as positive sum, as there's a possibility to add more or to collaborate with people. And therefore, if I collaborate with Daniel, then we both end up with a podcast. It's great. And it's way more boring if there's only one of us on either side. And so the collaborative possibility is just better by virtue of together we can do more. There doesn't have to be a like we were collaborative before we were competitive. There doesn't have to be some competition between them. I can just propose that, hey, collaborative is pretty good. And there are books like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that talk about think win-win. Like, there's a How to Win Friends and Influence People, where if you're making a deal with someone and you can get a win-win, that's gonna go over way better. I read a book. There was a book on. I got very interested in law a couple of times in my life, and I read a book on contract law, and they make the point in the contract law book that the best contract that you ever write will if you have a good business partnership, like the human relationship, and that goes really well, and the contract is shitty and the contract is flawed, then it doesn't matter. If you have a bad business partnership and you have the best contract in the world it's not going to matter because you're still going to tear each other to shreds over the contract and still going to hate each other and still going to argue. So actually, the purpose and the point of the law and the contracts is to support the relationship, to support the humans. The law, in as far as it is doing something and trying to do something, exists to support the humans involved. And so if you exert your energy and make sure that the human side is taken care of, the contracts will take care of themselves. And by all means, write a good contract. But if everyone is happy with the deal, then no one's questioning the contract.
Yeah.
The same goes for like, you know, if I'm like collaborating with you is gonna produce better stuff than if I try and make videos on my own, then and it's better for you as well than if you try and make videos on your own, then neither of us is going to go off and try and make videos on our own because we're doing the collaborative thing. It's self-evident that it is beneficial. So as long as you maintain that and keep practicing the collaborative thing, you're going to win. Like, it doesn't have to have a game A is evil, game B is good. It can just be like a simple story of like, hey, this seems to work better.
And like I said this, I think the last episode, but like to me, this is the heart of capitalism. Like, this is the spirit of capitalism. Because most business you're going to do is going to be repeat business. And you only get that if you're in the collaborative, if you're doing the collaborative. If the other person thinks you're doing the collaborative.
Interesting.
And you're collaborating within the societal, like you're actually creating more resources than you're losing on the aggregate.
Yeah, incredible. So always seek to give the bountiful and you will receive the bountiful.
It's not give, it's create.
Create the bountiful. Enable the bountiful, and many shall be filled with bounty.
I bet there's like a Bible verse that goes good here. I wish I knew more New Testament.
There is the Matthew principle, which is it's sometimes taken to talk about compound interest, but it's something like, and I'm going to butcher myself for misquoting this, to he who has more will be given, to he who has not, even what he has shall be taken away. Which is comes from a Christian Bible. Which is to propose that if you live in bountiful times, you will have more than you ever desire. And if you live in scarcity, even what you have will dwindle away with great speed. All right. I want to
maybe render unto Caesar or something also, where you're render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's and God unto which is God, where it's like don't be greedy, like make sure you know, like just give things to the people that they
I would on that topic, pay your taxes, because when you pay your taxes, you only pay your taxes if you've made a profit, right? So pay as many taxes as possible, because that will imply great wealth.
That irks my libertarians, and there is definitely truth to what you're saying.
All right, now's a good time to wrap up. All right.
You're like, okay, enough game B, let's go game home.
Game home.
Psychotechnologies.